Chapter 9:13. Behind the shattered, distorted barrier, the sacred Golden Palace was completely exposed to everyone's line of sight. A wild and ancient aura flashed out of the glorious palace, instantly affecting the whole world. Under such a fluctuation, even the people who were carefully watching from afar felt their chests tighten, as if they had been hit by a heavy blow and fell from the sky. Those who had not reached the demigod level, because they had not awakened their divinity, were blasted tens of thousands of feet away by the powerful divine aura. "Be careful," Yuan Shi and the others shouted as the primordial aura surged forward like a shockwave. They subconsciously raised an energy barrier, but their barrier was clearly too weak. The divine aura directly passed through their barrier and passed through their bodies like lightning. It made their chests tighten and even their auras stagnate for a moment. Dingling. Just as everyone's energy was not circulating smoothly, a crisp sound of a zither suddenly drifted out. The azure notes turned into substance and floated around their bodies. Waves of decadent music flowed, causing everyone to be stunned. The discomfort in their bodies also disappeared. Everyone cast their gazes to the front and saw Yin Noashing hugging a 6-foot-long zither. The azure river of energy was flowing out of the zither in his arms. The waves of immortal music were incomparably beautiful and blocked the primordial aura that was constantly spreading. Don't leave the swirling zither's range. The divine aura outside is not something you can withstand. Yin Nuashing softly reminded everyone as he turned around and glanced at everyone. The 2 demonic wings on his back had already shrunk by 90%, leaving only about 10 feet long. The 6 demonic wings were also pulled back behind him like a screen. Everyone nodded solemnly. They also knew that they could not touch a ruin of this scale. If it were not for Yin Nuashing, no one would have been able to open this place. Even if he had a way to open it, it would be as they had expected. He was already very weak after opening the seal of the divine ruin. His aura was somewhat weak, and even the demonic wings formed by the elements of primal chaos had shrunk from more than 10 feet long to only about 10 feet long. While everyone was thinking, a wave of energy suddenly came from the Golden Palace's door. A primordial aura that had transcended countless time and eras suddenly erupted. It impacted the land and shattered the sky. The swirling zither's barrier was also on the verge of collapse under the impact. However, it still managed to hold on when the impact was over. Above the golden door, layers of ripples appeared in the space, and a strange energy fluctuation spread out. The space twisted like a whirlpool and gradually formed an azure spatial door. The enormous spatial energy caused everyone to fiercely swallow their saliva. The spatial door that they had seen in the past did not have such an enormous spatial energy. Would they be completely destroyed if they jumped in? I should have less than 2 hours left. Yin Nuashing raised her hand and looked at the demonic runes on her body. She lowered her eyes and said indifferently, "So, there is no time to test anything. Everything will be left to the swirling zither. Let's go." Everyone nodded. Yin Nuashing rushed into the spatial door like she was chasing the stars and the moon. She resisted the power of the divine ruin outside and crashed into the spatial door. After they left, only the land slowly became heavy under the influence of the divine ruin. In the distance, there were many onlookers. However, they did not know what was going on. Not many people dared to come close. This was a very strange space. It was just an ordinary palace, but everyone felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if they had stayed here for a long time. Inside the Golden Palace, the walls and floor were made of star domain. It was a real, solid starry sky. When the divine ruin built this palace, he had condensed a real starry sky and fixed it here. However, this was only a shadow of the real starry sky. He had not really moved the star domain here. The surrounding scenery was somewhat strange. The starry sky was very deep and mysterious. Walking on such a starry sky corridor, one might find it refreshing at first, but after a while, one would feel a little depressed. This was because the starry sky was everywhere, and because it was a real silhouette copied from the real starry sky. If one's eyesight was good enough, they could even see the situation in the deep space through these starry walls. Since ancient times, no one had ever visited this place. Now that a group of guests had arrived, the silence and loneliness that had lasted for tens of thousands of years slowly faded away. The starry sky lit up once more, and the suns became abnormally bright and dazzling, making people want to poke at them. Then, Lin Sheng really reached out and poked the extremely bright sun on the wall. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded through the world, causing the Golden Palace to tremble violently. A shockingly powerful super energy suddenly erupted from the star on the wall. The extremely brilliant blue energy blasted outside the wall at the speed of light. Before anyone could see anything, they realized that space had shattered. Then, their faces turned pitch black. Cough, cough. What happened? Is it an enemy attack? Or is it a trap? Nightmare roared crazily and pointed his weapon around. In the end, he saw a group of people looking at his charcoal black face with inexplicable expressions. He could only stop acting crazy resentfully. Lin Sheng, who was closest to the wall, was blasted until his entire body turned black. It was as if he had just been fished out of ink. Even now, he was still in the posture of extending his finger with a blank expression. Clap, clap. The sudden crisp applause made everyone even more confused. When they turned their heads, they saw Yuan Nuoxing clapping expressionlessly. They were all stunned. Lin Sheng scratched his head awkwardly. Did I get into trouble? If it wasn't for the barrier of the swirling zither, you would have gotten into trouble. Congratulations on your trip to the underworld. However, Old Master Yin didn't want to talk to you, so you came back, Yin Nuoxing said with a faint smile. Everyone was confused. They didn't know what had happened. Yin Nuoxing sighed in annoyance and pointed at the wall with her chin. You just poked a star with your finger. A real star exploded. Moreover, it was a star from the Eight Elements realm. Just now, you guys took on a torrent of energy that had the power to split heaven and earth. Isn't that great? Everyone was shocked. That thing can at least kill a row of countless underworld emperors. It could take on a god emperor expert head-on. Without the barrier, you guys might have disappeared into thin air, Yin Nuoxing said expressionlessly. Lin Sheng retracted his finger. He trembled for a long time and didn't dare to speak. This is the field of vision condensed by divine right. It's a little toy used by gods. It's useless except for destruction. Moreover, it's a destructive skill used by high divinity life forms against low divinity life forms. It has no practical use. Yin Nuoxing looked at the wall of the star field and said, a place imprinted by the field of vision. The starry sky you see is real. However, if it's imprinted, any movement of objects in this place will be affected to the same extent in reality. For example, the sun on the wall. Although it is only the size of a ball, its volume in the star field is unimaginably huge. However, in reality, the true volume of this sun in this field of vision is only this big. When Lin Sheng used a finger to poke it just now, it was equivalent to using a finger to poke such a big sun. Yin Nuoxing explained, this is why you were able to blow it up with just one finger. If this sun really withstood the same degree of amplification of your power in reality, then it would have been enough to blow the sun up. Everyone looked at each other. Cold sweat drenched their clothes. They suddenly felt that there were bombs all around them. They didn't dare to move their feet. Little Star knows this field of vision too? Xian asked from his side. Yin Nuoxing nodded and sighed. I do, but it's useless. I just treat it as if I'm looking at the scenery. I imprinted a piece of the starry sky and watch the mortals on the living stars develop leisurely. When I'm bored, I can even use the field of vision to directly travel to that piece of starry sky and run to other places to play. Everyone's cheeks twitched. So, which god had created such a boring technique? However, for mortals, such a boring technique could easily destroy the world if they weren't careful. Sir God was indeed Sir God. They had to be careful with their every move. After this small episode, no one dared to casually touch the walls here. They even had to avoid the sparkling balls of light when they walked. They were afraid that they would step on an earth-shattering explosion and blow up the sun. Although it sounded very satisfying, it was not fun to be covered in dust. Boom! Just as they were talking, one of them accidentally stepped and was sent flying into the sky with a boom. Although the barrier of the whirlpool zither could help them block the energy shockwave that was powerful enough to blast an underworld emperor expert to smithereens, it did not prevent the shockwave from blasting them into the sky and sending them flying. Smack! A very pleasant sound was heard. Everyone calmly turned their heads and patted the dust off their bodies. They saw Nightmare sprawled on the floor, twitching. Nightmare stood up from the ground. She tidied her messy hair and sighed strangely. Why didn't any of you touch it? Only I did. Everyone thought for a moment. Bad luck. Boom. However, for the rest of the journey, there were still sparks and explosions. This series of explosions caused the Golden Palace to shake violently. Fortunately, this palace was created by a god, and its quality was high. Even after several eras, it was still standing. Even after being bombarded like this, it didn't collapse or crack. From this, one could see how high its quality was. However, everyone's faces darkened. The area within 1 zhang of Yinnuashing was an absolute defense. Not even a speck of dust could touch it. That area was naturally occupied by the girls. No one dared to snatch it. However, what they did not understand was, why did none of them step on it? No matter how careful they were, they would still accidentally touch it. Along the way, almost everyone had touched it, except for the few of them. Are you stupid? Can't you float? When everyone asked this question, Yin Nuashing replied disdainfully. Only then did everyone react. They looked at Yin Nuashing and the others. Indeed, their feet were more than an inch off the ground. No wonder there was no sound when they walked. Why didn't you say so earlier? Nightmare was annoyed. He was the only one who was being bombarded here and there. He had been bombarded at least 10 times along the way. Yin Nuashing thought for a moment. It's quite fun to see you guys being bombarded here and there. Everyone's faces twitched. This guy had changed completely in the state of chaos. He was not so bad in the past, really. After tidying up their sorry figures, the group floated up into the air. Their feet were an inch off the ground. The group floated in the air like ghosts, walking without making a sound. The starry sky corridor seemed to be endless. The starry sky had changed many times. Perhaps it was just a change of perspective. After all, the starry sky was boundless. Looking at it from a different point of view would lead to different scenes. Everyone present, including Yin Nuashing, could not tell where these visual fields led to. However, after walking for a while, a giant door appeared at the end of the corridor. It was also made from the star domain. Before this, they did not see any other forks in the road, nor did they see any other doors. The door that had just appeared here was still the first door. Clang! Yin Nuashing walked forward and let the swirling zither float beside her. Then, she pushed the door open without any hesitation. The ancient loneliness completely dissipated with the dull sound of a collision. Then, the thing that appeared behind the door made everyone tremble. Their eyes widened in shock. What appeared in front of everyone was a sealed room. The door had appeared out of thin air in the middle of the room. The 4 walls completely sealed off the room. The 6 walls were all filled with the starry sky. Everyone was at a loss when they saw this. Oh, don't close the door yet. Find someone to hold it up. Otherwise, the door will close by itself, said Yin Nuashing as she looked at the star domain doors on both sides. Are all of these vision domains? Yuanshi took a deep breath. His voice was filled with shock. What was the deity trying to do? What was his goal after condensing so many starry skies? No, at least these 3 walls aren't. Yin Nuashing shook her head. She pointed at the wall facing the door, as well as the 2 walls to the left and right. She said, no one can use these 3 places as visual fields. No one. His firm and absolute words caused everyone to be stunned as they hurriedly looked at the 3 walls. In a wall in front of them, there was an extremely obvious transparent ball of light floating in the starry sky. It looked about 3 meters large. When they walked up to the wall, they could clearly see what was inside the ball of light. It was a world that looked like a huge floating island. Everyone was stunned. Nightmare frowned and could not help but mutter, why do I feel that this thing is so familiar? Yuanshi also nodded. Then, as if he had thought of something, he cried out involuntarily, "This can't be the realm of the gods, right?" Yin Nuashing nodded. "Yes, this is the realm of the gods. It's the world we live in. It's known as the largest world in the Eight Elements realm. It's now hidden, and outsiders have no way of knowing what's inside." Everyone stared blankly at the body of the realm of the gods. This was the first time they had seen the realm of the gods like this. It was a very magical feeling. They had clearly been to the starry sky and the Five Elements realm, but they could still exclaim, "Ah, this is our world. It's so beautiful." What about the other two? She suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly pointed at the wall on the left. There was also a ball of light there. In the ball of light, there was a pyramid-like structure. There were layers upon layers. The planar continent at the bottom was incomparably huge, and the higher you went, the smaller it became. I've been to the Saint Spirit realm a few times. The planar continent at the bottom is called the realm of living beings. It's mostly where mortals and people with low cultivation live. The second planar continent is called the seat of earth. The people there have higher cultivation. Above that is the sacred heavenly plane and the spirit summit. As Yin Nuashing spoke, some reminiscence flashed past her eyes. However, this glimmer of brilliance only flashed by, and no one saw it. The Saint Spirit realm is one of the three top continents of the Eight Elements realm. Its area is comparable to the realm of the gods. Many of its customs and habits are very different from the realm of the gods. The people there mainly cultivate their souls and their source of life. The people in the Saint Spirit realm are long-lived. Even mortals have no problem living for tens of thousands of years. It's just next to the realm of the gods, separated by 2 or 3 worlds. It's not too far away, Yin Nuashing said. The Saint Spirit realm is also a world that still has god-level people or methods of that level. What about the other one? Nightmare flicked his thumb and pointed at the wall behind him. What's that island that looks like a 4-person rotation? 4-person rotation. Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. She let out a dry cough and said, "That's the Chanyuan realm, one of the 3 top continents of the Eight Elements realm. The entire realm is made up of a huge central continent, the Chanyuan continent, and 4 huge companion islands around it. The 4 companion islands are Dragon Mark Island, Glazed Island, Dawn Island, and Sky Attraction Island. The 4 islands float around the Chanyuan continent and have their own landmarks. The appearance of the landmarks themselves is also very important. The people of that world mainly cultivate their spiritual power and physical strength. Just these 2 aspects alone are not comparable to them, unless we also cultivate these 2 aspects. What about the realm of the gods? What are we supposed to cultivate? Yaohua asked. Yin Nuashing smiled mysteriously. Everything. Everything is possible, and everything is under our control. You can major in anything you want. There may be elements in other worlds as well, but they shouldn't be as complete as the God realm. The realm of the gods, the Saint Spirit realm, and the Chanyuan realm aren't the only worlds with God-level methods and God-level experts. It's just that these 3 worlds are the top of the Eight Elements realm. There are many reasons why the realm of the gods is ranked first. The Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm have always been on par with each other. I wonder how they're doing now. Yin Nuashing smiled mysteriously. But of all the worlds with God-level experts, only the realm of the gods has heavenly gods, and the God-level experts of other worlds aren't as strong as the realm of the gods. Everyone looked forward to the realm of the gods. Their eyes were filled with faint pride. They didn't know that the world they came from was so powerful. Chapter 9:14. Even so, the realm of the gods had its share of troubles. During the primordial era, some other unique worlds, such as the Saint Spirit realm and the Chanyuan realm, had their own unique methods to fend off the celestial gods of the realm of the gods. Near the middle of the primordial era, a place known as the 3,000-star ruins appeared in space. It was a ruin left behind by an ancient life form, and it was said that the ancient life form had left something behind in that place. The 3,000-star ruins contained clues to that thing, and the final clue, or rather, all of the clues found in the ruins pointed to the realm of the gods. At that time, the realm of the gods had yet to be sealed off, and that was why countless people had set foot on this land. What was that thing? Nightmare could not help but ask. Yin Nuashing frowned and pondered seriously for a moment before shaking her head. I don't know. No one knew what that thing was, but that thing had the power to change the world and was extremely attractive to celestial gods as well. However, we were not interested in it and did not pursue that thing. At that time, we were already celestial gods, and even if it was something that was attractive to ordinary celestial gods, we would not necessarily be interested in it. However, we were a little surprised when we learned that the destination was the realm of the gods. Later on, those who had their eyes on that mysterious thing invaded the realm of the gods. They did not come as guests, but as invaders. The dozens of neighboring worlds all declared war on the realm of the gods. Even the other planets in the realm of the gods that were not related to the realm of the gods also declared war. Perhaps it was because the realm of the gods was too infamous, but it could not be helped. Yin Nuashing sighed and gently stroked the huge wall with her palm. Looking at the huge, floating island, a trace of reminiscence flashed across her eyes. It was a very long war, lasting for 16,959,423,000 years, right at the end of the 68th era. Even though the realm of the gods had many elites, such a long war with so many participants had exhausted the realm of the gods. The realm of the gods suffered greatly after 16 trillion years of war. Every inch of the land was searched, and every inch of the land was dug up. However, there was still no clue left behind by that ancient life form. Yin Nuashing paused for a moment, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, there was some indifference in her eyes. On the day of the 69th era of the primordial realm, Old Shan, I, and the others lured all the elites who participated in the war to the realm of the gods. We spread false information in every corner of the realm of the gods. In a month, 20 trillion outsiders appeared in the realm of the gods, including the 1,000 trillion people who had occupied the realm of the gods, or rather, the 1,020 trillion lives. Yin Nuashing raised her right hand and brought it down. I used the pillar of creation to set up a chain formation that covered the entire realm of the gods. It was also on that day that I fully activated the formation. In half a day, the 1,020 trillion lives were all reduced to ashes. When those 4 words fell, everyone shuddered violently. Even their teeth were chattering. 1,000 trillion lives were wiped out just like that. You could say that it was to restore peace to the realm of the gods. Yin Nuashing sighed. At that time, most of the people in the god world were already dead. 9 deities' temple and a few ancient sects saved those who could be saved, and those who couldn't were ignored. It took a long time to activate the formation, and once it was discovered, everything would be for naught. We activated it early, and not a single person managed to escape. The entire god world was cleansed, and after that, it took a long time to recover. After that incident, the other worlds also gave up on the idea of searching for something in the god world. That time, when the entire army advanced, the vitality of the dozens of worlds was greatly damaged, and some were even directly wiped out. Many of the worlds were wiped out. However, I also destroyed a type of divine flame because of that. I used it as a sacrifice and consumed it. Yin Nuashing scratched her head a little regretfully. Which type? Yuanshi curiously asked. The divine flame was something that was nurtured by the heavens and earth, yet it could actually be destroyed. This made her feel a little incredulous. She had never heard of a divine flame being destroyed. You've seen it before. Oh, I should say you've heard it from me. Yin Nuashing smiled. Now that I've seen it grow again, I'm a little relieved. After all, destroying a divine item of heaven and earth is harmful to the harmony of the world. Even if the divine item of heaven and earth caused harm to the world, destroying it is harmful to the harmony of the world. The red lotus karmic fire in the northeastern part of the Source Peak region. But to be honest, karmic fire isn't really a fire. It's just a manifestation of the power of precepts. Back then, I spent a long time looking for it. Now that I've used it up, my heart aches. My heart aches so much. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook her head. However, at that time, there was no other way. I could only do this, so I did it. However, later on, the chain formation broke down. It was useless after one use. Later on, I wanted to restart it, but no matter what I did, I couldn't restart it. I wanted to weave a new chain formation. That formation gathered the power of laws of the realm of the gods. If it was destroyed, it would cause a slight disturbance to the laws and order of the realm of the gods. Don't underestimate this slight disturbance. The slightest disturbance to the laws and order of the realm of the gods will cause irreversible changes to the original inhabitants of this world. Moreover, there's an 80% chance that it will go in a bad direction. Looking at Yin Nuoxing's solemn expression, everyone couldn't help but smile bitterly. Why did she have to do something so dangerous? However, later on, Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. She rummaged through the pendant with a strange expression and then pulled out a piece of paper. On it were a few words written in flamboyant calligraphy. Divine land. Kuan, Qian Ji Tai. Divine land. Ah, this thing, Ming suddenly exclaimed. She was the only one present who knew what this small piece of paper was. This is? Xian looked at it curiously, but couldn't see any mystery. He could only ask. When my brother and I first met Sister Xianine, the heaven-defying ultimate god from the divine secret pavilion gave it to my brother. At that time, my brother was planning his life path and looking for his origins. In the end, he just went to Divine Land and came back to the Taiyuan territory, Ming said softly as she stroked her wings. Everyone looked at Yin Nuoxing with some surprise. They had more or less heard of the divine secret pavilion's name. However, Yin Nuoxing was only deep in thought and ignored everyone's gazes. After a long time, she suddenly laughed, causing everyone to be confused. I understand now. This thing is not for me to find my own origins. That old fellow has already calculated so far ahead. Yin Nuoxing suddenly covered his forehead and laughed. Everyone looked at each other, not understanding what was going on. After laughing for a while, Yin Nuoxing coughed softly and waved the piece of paper in her hand to everyone. She said, I got this thing more than 10 years ago. At that time, I was still in the Red Star Academy and was a little lost. Especially when I met Xianine at that time, I was even more lost. Later, the old man came to the academy to find me and left me this. He made me think that it was the direction of my actions, isn't it? Yuan, she said. Yin Nuoxing shook her head. The information on this piece of paper is for the current me. In other words, it's for the me who has recovered the identity of Quarter Moon. It's for me to use this identity to do what I have not done in the past. After saying that, Yin Nuoxing slapped the starry sky wall. The huge floating island in the divine realm suddenly trembled. Then, under everyone's gaze, it slowly shook and turned over. The top was facing them as if they were looking down from the sky. Yin Nuoxing pressed her palm on Divine Land. Divine Land, Chaos Formation, Kuan Yuan Region, Holy Spirit Formation. Gan Yuan Region, Divine Sky Formation, Ji Yuan Region, Chaotic Formation, Taiyuan Region, Indefinite Formation. Every time he chanted a formation, he would press his palm on that huge area. His high-pitched voice affected everyone's minds. Finally, he slapped his palm heavily on the center of Divine Land. Little Divine Land is the closing point of the entire chain formation. I think I know how to fix it. I'll find some time to fix it and reactivate the formation. It can be considered a trump card, but this trump card has a lot of implications. What does it have to do with me? Everyone was calm. They had been scared by Yin Nuoxing so many times that they had unknowingly become numb to it. Although their backs were already cold, when they heard Yin Nuoxing's even colder words, they didn't feel anything special. Yes, they were used to it, used to this guy not taking life seriously. Ahem, well, it has nothing to do with you, but it has something to do with us. Yuanshi coughed loudly and rolled his eyes at Yin Nuoxing. You're having a great time showing off your trump card. It involves the entire divine realm. The entire divine realm. We might die. It's fine. When the time comes, I'll just let you guys hide in the 9 divine palaces. The 9 divine palaces' defenses can withstand a full power attack from a heavenly god without suffering any damage. They can also withstand the great samsara, Yin Nuashing said calmly. Yuanshi was speechless. Yuanshi was distressed. Yuanshi tugged at his long hair. All right, actually he had already expected this sentence, but when it really came out, he couldn't help but laugh bitterly. This guy was really a little cold in his chaotic state. It was quite stressful for him to say such words that treated human lives like dirt, little moon, and Ur, who stuck out their little tongues. They also felt that their big brother was a little strange in this state, although they could still feel a sense of familiarity from him. Ever since he entered his chaotic state, he hadn't really spoken much. He shrunk his neck, as if he was a younger sister who had caused trouble and was waiting to be scolded. Big brother, let's not talk about this first. We've been standing here for half an hour. Ming looked at Yin Nuashing and said helplessly, "Oh." Yin Nuashing also came back to her senses. She scratched her head, then looked at the sealed room and muttered to herself for a while. Speaking of which, there aren't any other passageways in this place. Don't tell me we have to go back the way we came or something. Nightmare and the others were also distressed. When Yin Nuashing was talking about history, they had already thoroughly understood this aspect, but they didn't discover anything. The riddles here aren't left for you guys. Yin Nuashing shook her head with a strange smile on her face. Everyone felt that something was wrong. Could be left for you? In a sense, that's not wrong. Yin Nuashing nodded, then shook her head. But it's still not right. This place, to be precise, was left for the gods of the ancient era to visit. This is a door. A door? Everyone was puzzled. There wasn't even a crack in this place, so how could there be a door? Yin Nuashing patted the wall with the world of the gods hanging on it and said, "The starry sky here is the starry sky of the ancient era. To be more specific, it's the starry sky of the beginning of the 69th era, which is the starry sky of the awakened starry sky after my great cleansing. Perhaps the owner of this ruin made a copy of it. There are a few small mistakes here, so small that it's enough to make me wonder if there's something wrong with my memory. After all, so many years have passed, so it's normal for me to remember something inconspicuous wrongly. However, this inconspicuous thing should be the switch." Yin Nuashing shrugged. As she spoke, she went forward and leaned half of her body against the wall. She stood on her tiptoes and stretched out her hand. Then, she tragically realized that she wasn't tall enough. Everyone watched as she suddenly stiffened and tried her best to hold back her laughter. She almost suffered internal injuries from holding it in. Hey, what the heck? Is there a requirement for height in this place? Yin Nuashing was exasperated. You can't even fly in this place. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Actually, according to normal standards, she was considered quite tall among this group of people. She happened to be 8 meters tall. Excluding Mountain and the other burly men, she was quite tall among this group of people. Unfortunately, she was still a little short. Yin Nuashing was distressed. She took out the 18-million-pound hammer from her body and placed it on the ground. Everyone felt the ground tremble for a while before it stopped. Stepping on the hammer was already high enough. Yin Nuashing carefully pinched the green starlight above her with 2 fingers. Then, she gently moved it half a meter to the side and swapped positions with the yellow starlight. Then, she flipped the realm of the gods over. As the realm of the gods was flipped, the stars in the entire starry sky also moved. It was as if there was a change in perspective. At this moment, they were facing the bottom of the realm of the gods. After working like this for a long time, everyone was dumbfounded as they watched Yin Nuashing shift the light spots around. Everyone couldn't see any difference, but Yin Nuashing could. She couldn't help but sigh. How bored was this fellow 70 years ago? How could he remember the positions of so many stars in the boundless starry sky? Lord God was indeed Lord God. She couldn't see through his thoughts at all. Bang. After jumping up and down for a while, Yin Nuashing suddenly kicked the wall in exasperation. She opened her mouth and cursed. F***CKU. At Yin, and which bastard made such a boring thing. I'll find your grave and F*CKU. At percent, everyone blushed with shame. This was a god who was so bored that her bones were moldy, tormenting a lord god who was so bored that his soul was moldy. Anyway, everyone just watched as the realm of the gods was flipped over and over again. The perspective changed back and forth. They watched as Yin Nuashing moved the stars around busily. After a long time, about 6 hours, Yin Nuashing finally sat down with a stomach full of anger and depression. Her entire body emitted a deathly aura that warned others not to disturb her. You can't do it? Do you need help? Yuanxi asked cautiously. Yin Nuashing raised her head and looked at him in annoyance. She said, "If you know the positions of the stars 70 years ago, it's not impossible for you to help me." Then, Yuanxi became mute. Everyone was speechless. How bored must she be to remember these things? They couldn't even remember the positions of the stars in the current starry sky. Okay, was this something a normal person would do? Was this something a normal god would do? All right, I can see everything from your expressions. Yin Nuashing shook her head helplessly. She waved her hand and said, "It's almost done. There's still about 100 stars left. It won't be long." Everyone sighed. Ming and Xian walked forward and stretched out their hands. In the end, they were stunned. Remembering that they couldn't touch her for the time being, they put down their hands. The latter said with some heartache, "You look too tired, but we can't help you." Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. "It's okay." She sat on the ground and rolled around. After a while, she stood up again and continued to stand on her tiptoes on the hammer, busying herself with moving the stars. Everyone looked at her busy back and felt a little apologetic. Since she came in, she had been busy. However, when they thought about their own abilities, they could only sigh. They couldn't help it. An able person should do more work. They were just here to suck up to her. At this time, they could only quietly look away and be in a daze. Boom! After another 2 hours, a sudden roar woke everyone up. They hurriedly raised their heads and saw Yin Nuashing wiping his sweat with his hands on his waist, as if relieved of a heavy burden. He let out a long sigh of relief. It's finally done. Everyone stood up in surprise. Then, they saw that the wall suddenly lit up with lines of light. It was as if countless neat cracks had appeared on the wall. Many rays of light constantly penetrated through the cracks. The pattern of the starry sky turned into a complete pattern and no longer had any signs of life. Then, the wall in front of them slowly opened from the center with a rumbling sound. Then, pieces of the wall shrank into the walls on both sides. Crack! A long syllable rang out with some echoes, and finally stopped at this sound. What appeared behind the wall was a world of lush greenery. Towering ancient trees and oddly shaped plants were everywhere as far as the eye could see. It was as if this was a world occupied by plants. The scene that suddenly appeared in front of them stunned everyone. Yin Nuashing wasn't surprised. She took the lead and walked in. Everyone quickly followed. This place was very strange. Even the walls beside them were covered with moss. They couldn't tell if they were man-made or stone walls. The yellowish-green light from the ceiling shone on this lush green world. It was somewhat strange. Or rather, this world was very strange to begin with. This light added an extremely strange feeling to their senses. This place was very out of place. Chapter 9:15. It was a world of lush greenery. Towering ancient trees and strange plants were thousands of feet tall. The ceiling was brownish yellow, like the color of rocks, but it was not made of earthy rocks. However, regardless of why there was a ceiling or what was going on, Yin Nuashing and Little Purple Soul had already seen it. The red ball of light was very dazzling in their eyes. It was so dazzling that they wanted to pounce on it immediately. However, they were in the ruins of the gods. This extremely strange forest made everyone feel a little depressed. Yin Nuashing did not want to rush over in one breath. She waved her hand, and the swirling zither floated into her arms. She gently stroked it twice, then turned around to look at everyone and said, "Let's go. We can see the place." Only then did everyone recover from their shock and quickly follow. Only then did Yin Nuashing take a step forward and plunge into the forest. From time to time, he would use his hand to push aside the overgrown leaves and branches. It was as if they had suddenly returned to the primitive times. They grew in the forest, and the sky and the ground were green. Huge tree roots protruded from the ground. They could not fly, so they could only climb. The tree roots looked like small hills. Along the way, they saw some unknown flowers and plants. They emitted a strange fragrance. There was no poisonous smell, but the bright colors made everyone uncomfortable. There was an inexplicable sense of oppression in this place. Faint sounds of the zither floated out from the swirling zither in Yun Nuashing's arms. The wood element was also condensed in the sound of the zither. Yun Nuashing sensed it slightly, then turned around and said to everyone, "Don't worry. There is no danger, at least not for now. There is also no living thing here, except for these strange plants." Hearing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. No matter when he opened his mouth, these words always made people feel at ease. They subconsciously comforted everyone who was uneasy. This strange forest was very large. Even with their fast walking speed, it took them nearly 4 hours to reach the center of the forest. This should be the center of this place. The serrated sword in Yun Nuashing's hand had a faint reaction. The center seemed a little strange. Or rather, this place was already strange enough, but this place was even stranger. There was an extremely wide, open space here, and there were no strange plants in a large circle. However, in the center, there was a huge ancient tree with luxuriant branches and leaves. The branches and leaves spread out like a huge umbrella. When the huge tree appeared, the sawtooth sword in Yun Nuashing's hand trembled. He simply let go of it and let the huge sword rush out by itself. Then, he forcefully pierced the huge ancient tree. Plop! The giant sword emitted an unprecedentedly bright light and suddenly flickered. The entire ancient tree also bloomed with bright light at this moment. Then, a golden pillar of light suddenly rushed into the sky and exploded into a bright ball of light in the sky. The ball of light was like a sea urchin with many thorns. In fact, it was the energy node that everyone had seen before. It was just that this ball of light looked particularly strange. As the golden ball of light exploded, the dense forest suddenly trembled. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, it began to dissipate. Those strangely shaped plants were all plated with a layer of golden light and slowly dissipated into golden particles, spiraling in the air and disappearing. The entire forest was like this, including the huge ancient tree. It slowly dissipated into golden particles at this moment. It was as if a golden rain of light had suddenly fallen from the sky. Endless light particles drifted and danced in the sky like little fairies. The dazzling golden light permeated this strange world. At this moment, this scene was incomparably beautiful and magnificent. Everyone stood in the center of this golden rain of light. Their eyes shone with golden light. They didn't know why, but they felt very happy when they saw this scene. Little purple Soul jumped down from Ming's arms and chased after the light particles happily. She caught them in her hands and released them again. Her big purple gold eyes looked at the light particles excitedly. This golden rain of light, coupled with the little girl's giggles, was very cheerful. However, Yun Nuashing was the only one who looked at this scene in a daze. There was a hint of undetectable sadness in her eyes. She gently closed her eyes and sighed slowly. The magical golden rain of light lasted for 10 minutes. When all the plants dissipated, the original appearance of this place was revealed. It was a strange place. It was a huge square room. Although it was called a room, it was too big. It was like a box. Mysterious golden runes were branded in all directions. These runes covered the ground and the sky in an orderly manner. Even the spacing between the runes was neat. When the golden rain of light completely ended, Yun Nuashing opened her eyes and sighed softly. She waved her hand in the air as if there was someone in that direction. "Rest in peace, buddy." Huh? When everyone heard her, they were stunned. They turned their heads in confusion and saw Yun Nuashing looking indifferently in front of her. They also looked over, but they didn't see anything. They were puzzled. What's wrong? She scratched her head. She was in a good mood just now, but for some reason, because of Yun Nuoxing's words, she calmed down a little. She instinctively felt that something was wrong. Nothing. I'm just sending off someone I don't know. Yun Nuoxing shook his head and let out a long sigh. The funeral of a heavenly god. Another heavenly god has passed away, another. Everyone's cheeks trembled. They suddenly understood what she was sad about. However, they were still shocked. The funeral of a god. Was that golden rain of light the funeral of a god? A god's body is condensed with powerful rules and karma. After their death, if they don't deliberately control their bodies, they will dissipate into the purest rules and karma factors and dissipate into the world. Yun Nuoxing's eyelids drooped slightly. The death of a god brings about a phenomenon. Everyone's expression trembled slightly as they looked at each other in dismay. Their excitement from just now had dissipated by quite a bit. None of them knew that the beautiful scene they had just seen was actually the phenomenon of a heavenly god's body dissipating. Cough, let's not talk about this. Let's go out first. Yun Nuoxing seemed to sense that everyone was a little depressed. She coughed dryly and said, "Moreover, it passed away long ago in the primordial era. I don't know why it persisted and allowed its body to remain. It only dissipated now." Thinking about what had just happened, Ming pondered for a while and said softly, "Could it be related to the energy nodes? After all, this is the only thing that happened just now." Yun Nuoxing also thought for a while and nodded. "That's the only explanation." "Well, who cares?" Everyone nodded and turned around to walk back to where they came from. This time, the time taken was much shorter. Without the dense forest, the road was flat and nothing could be seen. Apart from the golden runes that were imprinted in all directions, which piqued their curiosity, there was really nothing in this place. Then, when everyone returned to the door after an hour, they were all stunned. Yun Nuoxing's cheeks trembled and his expression changed as if he had thought of something. What appeared in front of them was still the same door. It was the door that led to the star domain walls on all sides. However, the door was blocked by densely packed golden runes. When they stretched out their hands and pressed on it, the golden runes seemed to have a physical body. Moreover, they felt a strange pressure from their hands that was blocking them. "What's this?" She scratched his head and turned to look at Yun Nuoxing. However, he saw that Yun Nuoxing's cheeks were trembling as if they were cramping. He was stunned, and a bad feeling spread from the bottom of his feet to his head. Cold sweat immediately flowed down his face. Cough, cough. Yun Nuoxing coughed dryly and attracted everyone's attention. Then, he muttered to himself for a while, as if he was organizing his words. After a while, he slowly said, "Now, there's good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first?" Everyone's hearts thumped and they looked at each other. Jining quickly said, "The bad news first." "The bad news is that we can't get out." Everyone's faces trembled. "Ah!" Yun Nuoxing shrugged and walked forward. With a flash of light in his right hand, the Netherruin's sword appeared in his hand. Then, he shouted softly, and the Netherruin's sword lit up with a bright purple-black light. He forcefully slashed the golden runes blocking the door. Clang! The sound of metal clanging resounded in everyone's ears. It was like the ringing of an iron bell, causing everyone's ears to tremble slightly. It took them a while to return to their senses and hurriedly look towards the door. The tip of the Nethervoid sword was pressed against the golden rune, erupting with waves of terrifying power. However, such an attack was unable to damage the golden rune at all, causing everyone's faces to pale slightly. "Then what's the good news?" Nightmare's eyes widened. He knew Yun Nuoxing's character. The good news was definitely the key. "The good news is..." Yun Nuoxing paused, pointed at the golden seal characters on the ground, and said, "This room, let's call it a room for now. The golden seal characters in this place are all the life's cultivation experience that disappeared God left behind. There might be something else inside. This should be the key to opening the door." Everyone was stunned again. They all scratched their ears and cheeks. Lin Sheng hurriedly said, "Then, what should we do?" "It's fine as long as you can comprehend it. Let's see who has a better comprehension ability in what they can comprehend. Also, don't try anything funny. The whirlpool zither can't break this thing. Just treat it as an extremely rare cultivation opportunity. Others can't even get their hands on a god's lifetime of cultivation experience, Yin Nuashing said. Brother, what about you? Ming asked worriedly. No matter how good one's comprehension ability was, it would take a long time to comprehend the things left behind by a god. How could it be comprehended just like that? However, Yin Nuashing didn't have that much time. Chaos elements and whatnot, me? Yin Nuashing was stunned. After a while, he realized what she was talking about. He pondered for a while and waved his hand. I'm fine for now. This place seems to be able to calm down the chaos elements. So I'm fine. Only then did everyone realize that Yin Nuashing didn't seem as cold as before. His voice was also very gentle. Find a place to sit down and cultivate. Whoever comprehends the things he left behind. That's right. It's only comprehension, not comprehension. Then you can leave. If you want to leave earlier, hurry up and cultivate. Sigh, bastard. Why did this guy leave behind things that are even stranger than mine? Yin Nuashing couldn't help but mutter as he spoke. Everyone couldn't help but laugh bitterly. So he knew that he was very strange. About this, how long will it take? Chu Yingzhan wrinkled her nose. I don't want to comprehend for 1,000 years. I'm still young. I don't want to be locked up in this depressing place for thousands of years. I don't know. As Yin Nuashing spoke, he found a place by the door and knelt down. Every god's lifetime of learning and cultivation is different. Even if gods comprehend something, it will take a long time. Anyway, if you don't comprehend anything, you won't be able to leave. It might take a day for someone to comprehend something. If it takes a long time, Yin Nuashing pondered for a while. Once he stopped talking, everyone became anxious. If it's a long time, just say it. It's very annoying to keep people in suspense like this. If it's a long time, there's no end to it. When this sentence was said, everyone wished that he hadn't said it. Many people's faces turned pale. What did he mean by no end? Were they going to be locked up here until they died? This is an opportunity left behind by a god. Didn't you come to the mystic realm to seek opportunities that can make you stronger? Now, the most precious opportunity in the entire mystic realm is in front of you. Why? Are you thinking of retreating? Yin Nuashing raised his head, glanced at them, and said calmly. Lin Sheng and the others smiled bitterly. Although that was what he said, they really weren't mentally prepared for this trial to be endless. They wanted to say something, but Yin Nuashing had already closed his eyes. His soul power spread out in all directions. His mind seemed to have sunk into this strange space. Seeing that he had entered a state of cultivation so quickly, everyone could only smile bitterly. They found a place to sit down, release their soul and mental power, and send it into the golden runes in all directions. Ming and Xian sat down on Yin Nuashing's left and right sides, less than a foot apart. Seeing that everyone had settled down to cultivate, the former looked at Yin Nuashing and said in his soul, Brother, you didn't say anything, right? Yin Nuashing was stunned. He opened his eyes in astonishment and looked at her. He said in confusion, I think I hit it very well this time. I acted very naturally. How could you tell? Xian also looked at him from the side. Although she didn't say anything, her expression clearly said that she knew. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but smile bitterly. Shaking his head helplessly, Yin Nuashing pondered for a while and said, It's not a big deal that you didn't say. Letting you comprehend the Tao here can indeed open that door. However, you also know that this is the lifetime cultivation experience of a god. It's helpful to anyone's cultivation. Even other gods can use it to gain insights. It's very easy to comprehend this kind of imprint that dissipates after death. But how can it be so easy to completely comprehend it? Even if you roughly scan it and just memorize it in your mind, you won't be able to do it without hundreds of years of effort. The owner of this ruin, the god who used to be, must be an old urchin. From the large field of vision that he set up in the starry sky decryption just now, I'm very sure that he must be an old urchin. He's more playful than I am. Therefore, he also left some shortcut here. As long as you can find it, there won't be a problem. You could get out very quickly, Yin Nuashing said. Okay, that's all. I didn't hide anything else. Looking at the two girls, Yin Nuashing spread his hands helplessly. He really explained everything clearly. There was nothing to hide. Then, will that shortcut have any special characteristics? Bing Air walked behind Yin Nuashing, bent down, and looked at him condescendingly. Yin Nuashing didn't dare to raise his head. If he did, he would probably see something incredible. Therefore, he continued to look ahead and said, I don't know for now, but there should be some pattern. After saying that, Yin Nuashing sighed again. It would be great if we could fly. There's a very serious angle problem here. Angle? The three girls were stunned. They looked at each other and asked, What angle? Let me ask you. Yin Nuashing twisted his neck and stretched out his right hand. It was as if he was pressing the ground in front of him and said, How do the gods see this world? This is a simple question. Don't think too much about it. Ming and the other two girls looked at each other and shook their heads. This simple question was a little complicated. They didn't know what he was trying to say at all. The gods stand in the clouds and look down on all living things. Yin Nuashing said faintly. At this moment, the three girls understood. Bing Air suddenly said, Daddy, are you saying that we have to look down from the sky? Something like that. These runes are definitely not placed randomly. When you enter the state of enlightenment later, try to use your soul's perspective to look down from above. See if you can see anything special. If you see the same runes or something, connect them or split them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You just have to find the hidden pattern. At the same time, you have to comprehend it. Who knows, maybe you'll really achieve enlightenment in a day. Yin Nuashing suddenly said the last sentence in a teasing tone. Ming smiled bitterly. How could it be so easy to achieve enlightenment? Although it was said that enlightenment would only happen in an instant, there were still a lot of preparations and preconditions to achieve that instant enlightenment. This place is a little big. I probably won't be able to handle it alone. Since you mentioned it, come and help me, Yin Nuashing said with a smile. Ming nodded. For this kind of thing, even if he didn't ask, they would still help. Whether they could do it or not, they would help without hesitation. Then, Yin Nuashing turned his finger and tilted his head. He looked at everyone who was seriously comprehending the runes. He couldn't help but smile faintly. He looked at Ming and the other two girls and said, Let's set a small goal first. Chapter 9:16. Time fleeted by like the sand between one's fingers. In the blink of an eye, spring passed and autumn came. Winter came and snow fell. Summer came and the scorching sun came. Time was like a wheel of reincarnation, spinning round after round without tiredness. Unknowingly, a few decades had passed. Decades my ass. Can't you say something nice? It's only been half a month. Hearing Yao Hua's pitiful mumbling, everyone couldn't help but fly into a rage. They rolled up their sleeves and took out their weapons, waiting to teach that guy a lesson about silence. Calm down. Impulsiveness is the greatest sin of mankind. Oh, save me. Little star, save me. Cough, cough. Wah. Seeing Yao Hua jumping up and down and crying while rolling around, Yin Nuashing's cheeks couldn't help but twitch. When she saw Yao Hua's bruised and swollen face, she thought for a while and didn't say anything. She just listened to his cries and couldn't help but sigh. As if sensing Yin Nuashing's unhappiness, Ding Mingyu hurriedly advised, All right, stop fooling around. If you have time to beat people up, why don't you spend more time comprehending? Look at little Junior and the others. They haven't stopped for half a month. After saying that, she used her silver Mei Mao to point at Yin Nuashing, Ming, and the others who had been sitting quietly together. Everyone sighed and slowly stopped what they were doing. They looked at Yin Nuashing and the others with complicated gazes. Yuanshi couldn't help but smile bitterly. Little Star hasn't stopped for half a month, but we can't take it anymore. We've comprehended too much, and our heads are bloated. After all, it's the Kami's lifetime of cultivation experience. Everyone sighed. They weren't like Yin Nuashing and the others. Yin Nuashing had a spiritual, godly body. Xian had a 5-elements body. Ming had directly turned into an angel, and Bing Air was a young mythical beast. These 4 people had their own unique characteristics and talents. Although Yuan Shi and Nightmare also had extraordinary physiques, they weren't as powerful as the other four. After comprehending for 3 days, they felt dizzy and stopped to sort out the messy things in their heads. Yuan Shi, Nightmare, and the others who were different from ordinary people persisted for a while, but they couldn't take it anymore and stopped on the 7th day. However, Yin Nuoxing and the others persisted until now and never stopped. The experience of a god is indeed very precious. Not only is it helpful for cultivation, it also has a lot of insights about life. There are many things that are worth comprehending. The so-called comprehension of the Tao, it can speed up our cultivation by a lot. Some things that we couldn't understand in the past can also be understood through this. Chu Yingzhan clenched her jade-like hands. She had gained a lot from comprehending in the past half a month. The Kami's understanding of all things in the world's origin energy, and the origin power was not something that little people like them could easily catch up with. Even a little bit of comprehension had benefited them a lot. It's quite precious, but there are too many. Yuan Shi smiled bitterly and shook his head. He pointed to where he was and said, "Just the 10 runes beside me alone took me half a month. Moreover, I heard Little Star say that I didn't fully comprehend it in one go. Just recording it took me half a month. In such a large space, how many runes are there?" Everyone silently calculated and then broke out in a cold sweat. It was better not to talk about this. The more they talked about it, the more frightened they felt. Just thinking about it made them feel like they would never be able to get out. With your speed of 10 runes in half a month, you can get out in tens of thousands of years. At this time, a faint voice sounded, causing everyone to shiver. They quickly turned their heads, only to see Yin Nuoxing looking at them expressionlessly. They couldn't help but laugh dryly. After hearing what he said, their dry laughs turned into bitter smiles, and their faces turned ashen. 10,000 years. When everyone thought of this huge number, they even had the thought of dying. Being locked up here for 10,000 years, they would probably go crazy. It was fine for people with calm temperaments, but Yao Hua and the others couldn't stand it. The divine sons and divine daughters of the 9 divine temples were all elegant and free like the wind. They would usually feel their buttocks itch if they were locked up for a few days. Now that they were locked up for tens of thousands of years, it was tantamount to taking their lives. 10,000 years. Is it too late to commit suicide now? Yao Hua's face was deathly pale. His legs went soft, and he fell to the ground dejectedly. The ashen atmosphere affected everyone. Yuan Shi was also shocked by this huge number. It wasn't days or hours, but years. He couldn't stand it, so he looked at Yin Nuoxing with hope. "Little Star, how many golden runes did you finish in half a month?" "Not many." Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment. His fingers stroked a strand of hair that hung down, and he silently counted for a while. Then, under everyone's hopeful gazes, he said about 9,000. Then, the air became silent. Everyone's eyes widened, and they looked at him with astonishment and disbelief. However, before Yin Nuoxing finished speaking, he pointed to the place where he was sitting, then pointed to a horizontal position, and then pointed into the distance. "It's probably in this area." Everyone was dumbfounded and didn't know what to say. Seeing everyone's astonished, and horrified gazes, and even the 3 girls beside him had strange expressions, Yin Nuoxing was also shocked. He waved his hand and said, "I used to be an enlightened master. I don't need so much time to comprehend these things, right?" Hearing this, everyone came to a sudden realization. Perhaps Yin Nuoxing was usually too calm, and enlightened masters were extremely mysterious super experts in their hearts. That was why it was difficult for them to connect the two situations together. However, if they thought about it the other way around, enlightened masters could also behave very much like humans. They also had 7 emotions and 6 desires, and there would also be times when they were tainted by the mortal world. Among the golden runes left here, many of them are insights from cultivation, and some of them are insights from cultivation of mystic arts and secret techniques. If you go and comprehend these, you can increase the speed and quality of your cultivation, and it will be much easier for you to cultivate mystic arts and secret techniques in the future. Some things can be linked together, and you'll understand with just a little bit. However, there are also memories of a period of his life in these runes, which is to say, the insights of a period of his life. You shouldn't touch those. Yun Nuoxing's voice was a little solemn when he said the last part. He seemed to feel that it wasn't very safe, so he added, "Oh, if you want to become crazy, it doesn't matter if you take a look." Then, everyone shook their heads decisively. What kind of joke was this? They were still young, and they didn't want to go crazy just because of the insights of a period of life. As for the insights of a person's life, you still can't. I don't recommend you to touch it now. It's still too early. If you directly comprehend those real memories, you might not be able to tell who you are. If you want to try, Yin Nuoxing pointed at his own head and joked, "I have the memories of hundreds of millions of lifetimes here. If you want to try and comprehend what the life of another person is like, I can let you try. With my guidance, I can still pull you back in the end. You won't go crazy, but you'll be unconscious for 8 to 10 days. Forget it, forget it, forget it." Everyone hurriedly waved their hands. Yin Nuoxing also laughed. He was just joking just now. If you really want to comprehend the life of an expert, at least wait until you've safely passed the demigod realm. It's still too early for you to do that now. Everyone had no other expression other than mocking smiles. Little Star, it's not very appropriate to ask this now, but I'm just asking. Yuanshi scratched his head and said, "We're not really going to be locked up here for 100 years, are we? Why? Are you not happy?" Yin Nuoxing raised his eyes and looked at him. He said calmly, "After 100 years of loneliness, you'll be able to see all the splendor of the world when your God spirit body is completed. Cultivating here is equivalent to having a God preaching to you. If you can cultivate here for 100 years, even if you don't become a God spirit, it won't be a problem for you to become an emperor god. Moreover, you're not the only one here, so you won't be lonely. If you have nothing to do, you can practice a few moves. Isn't that great?" Yuanshi was speechless. After all, if something like the lifetime cultivation experience of a god spirit was spread out, it would make any emperor god powerhouse scramble like a flock of ducks. It would be a small matter for them to go crazy over it. Who knew? They might even ascend to the position of a god spirit after comprehending it. This thing was as attractive as a poppy to any powerhouse below the god spirit realm. I can't say that. I know that this kind of experience is hard to come by, but I still don't want to be locked up here for 100 years. Besides, you see, there's still 7 years, maybe 8 years. Anyway, in 8 years, the demon world will appear. That's another kind of golden age. How can it be possible without us, right?" Yuanshi looked at Yin Nuoxing with a flattering expression. Yin Nuoxing looked at him speechlessly, sighed, and shook his head helplessly. Just when everyone thought that he had no other way, he said calmly, "You guys can cultivate at ease. At most, in a year, no more than that, this place will open." "Really?" Yuanshi's eyes lit up. Yin Nuoxing stared blankly at a certain someone whose hope had been reignited. He pointed to the side and said, "Go and cultivate." Everyone laughed and ran to the side and sat down. No matter what, this kind of experience was very, very rare. Since they had a year's time, they should cultivate well and do their best to improve themselves. Lin Sheng's idea was simple. He set a goal to become a demigod. Lin Sheng's idea was very simple. He set a goal and tried to reach the demigod rank within a year. This was not impossible. With the strange speed of cultivation in the Arcana land and the assistance of the gods preaching, if he could not reach the demigod rank within a year, he would despise himself. Moreover, he had personally tried it in the past half a month. This kind of extremely fast cultivation speed did not have any side effects. Perhaps he could really reach the demigod rank. Some of the demigods, such as Xian and the others, were thinking about breaking through to the beginner god spirit realm. As for Yun Nuoxing, while the others were busy cultivating, countless golden runes flashed in his mind, deciphering the information contained in them. He had found a way to open the door, but he still needed a long time to prepare for it. This period of time was a little long for the others, but for Yun Nuoxing, it was probably just the blink of an eye. Deities, in the blink of an eye, the world had changed. Time had become meaningless. As everything became quiet, space, and time seemed to have frozen. In the Jesu's secret territory, many people stopped in front of the deity relic. The rotating space door had disappeared, and the space was no longer as distorted as before. However, those who wanted to enter could not find any way. That day, after the explosion of a golden light above the deity relic was sealed. No one had been able to enter. Perhaps that was not the case. Other than the group of people who caused the explosion, no one else could enter. In just half a month, the golden light had spread across half of the Jesu's secret territory. The blue energy veins in the sky of the Jesu's secret territory turned golden. The energy veins in the sky of the Jesu's secret territory were half golden and half red. Moreover, the red was slowly turning golden. That kind of encroachment was very slow, but it was something that really happened. And every time it changed, it would change from red to gold. It was a vertical change, and every time it changed, it would only change by a few centimeters. It wasn't until one day that everyone realized that a part of the red veins in the sky seemed to have disappeared. Only then did they realize that the golden energy was flowing so quickly. The news about the saint of the Celestial Godly Academy and the other mysterious forces had already spread throughout the Jesu's secret territory. The former group of people was probably hopeless. They had not been seen for a long time. They were probably all dead. Not even a speck of dust was left. The cleansing that happened in the secret territory did not happen again, which seemed to indicate that those people had died. Maybe it was really over. Maybe they had all died in the fall of the sun. The explosion that affected the entire Jesu's secret territory was still fresh in the minds of many people. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. Half a year. It has been 7 months already. Holy items. 16 holy items. Other than the one in the void region, the other 15 have all appeared, but no one has obtained them. I have died a few hundred times. I am so tired. I don't want to get any holy items. I should just sit down and cultivate. The cultivation speed in this secret territory is quite good. What a pity. I feel like I have missed the greatest opportunity of my life. When will this trip to the secret territory end? I heard the seniors say that the past half a year should have ended. The longest was a year. A year? Isn't there still 5 months? No rush. I will set a small goal. I will reach demigod rank 5 in 5 months. The Jesu's secret realm was still the same as before. It was not wrong to say that it was lively, but there was a faint oppressive atmosphere. In the past 7 months, many people had recovered to their peak strength and explored the Jesu's secret realm. However, the sacred object that led them to the second stage had not been obtained yet. This caused many people to feel a faint oppressive feeling in their hearts. They were somewhat at a loss. Other than focusing on cultivation, they could not think of anything else to do. Yin Nuashing felt that he had woken up too quickly this time. In fact, he had not had many opportunities to enter a deep state of comprehension in the past half a year. As he said, he was not the only one here. When he woke up, it was because he was woken up. He was not afraid of the backlash. He was a formation master. He had set up a formation to prevent backlash from cultivating. It could protect everyone's mind and soul to the greatest extent. There was no need to worry about the backlash for being woken up. As a result, the crowd did as they pleased without any scruples when making a ruckus. Rumble, bang. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Nightmare and Yuan, she fighting for the 300th round in the distance. Billowing demonic aura and divine origin energy were circulating, energy splashing everywhere. It was extremely exciting. Those who were tired of cultivating or had to stop were also watching this good show. Yuanxi has reached demigod rank 9. Cultivating in this place is really fast for them. Yin Nuashing scratched his head and sighed. After a while, he turned his head and looked at Xian. He blinked and said, "Girl, are you also trying to break through to demigod rank?" Xian opened Mei Mao's eyes. A glimmer of light flashed across his deep purple eyes. He nodded and said, "I failed once half a month ago. This time, I am prepared. There should be no problem." In half a year, Ming and the others had recovered their strength to demigod rank. Xian had also successfully reached demigod rank 9. He was much faster than Yuan Shi and the others. It was just that he was a little anxious when he tried to break through to demigod rank half a month ago. At that time, Yin Nuoxing was still in a state of deep comprehension. Nobody woke him up. Naturally, he missed such an important moment. As a result, Xian failed to break through to demigod rank. However, this time, he was fully prepared. Yin Nuoxing was also beside him. There was absolutely no problem. It will be surprising if something went wrong. After the failure of the breakthrough, Yin Nuoxing was startled awake. When she saw Xian, she was stunned. In half a year, she had jumped from demigod rank 2 to demigod rank 9. Her body had been cleansed by divinity 9 times, and her physical body had changed a few times. When she first opened her eyes, she thought that she had mistaken Xian for someone else. After a while, she finally recognized Xian based on the color of her hair. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. After Xian reached demigod rank 9, she really changed so much that even Yin Nuoxing could not recognize her. Just as she had guessed before, the fairy aura that she had obtained from the Empress had begun to take shape in her body. It made her look like a fairy from the 9th heaven. Not only her appearance, but her temperament had also changed greatly. That was why he could not recognize her. Don't worry. This time, if I can't help you reach demigod rank, I would have lived for dozens of eras in vain. Yin Nuoxing shrugged her shoulders and said half-jokingly, "This time, even if you don't want to break through to demigod rank, I can still help you." Xian smiled, stroked her long hair, and nodded. After saying that, Yin Nuoxing looked at the others. Lin Sheng had not reached demigod rank yet. At this moment, he still looked like a demon rank 7 seal. Compared to others who had advanced 8 to 9 big realms, he was considered the slowest. However, it was not a good thing to cultivate too fast. Others had other ways to stabilize their realm and condense their energy. Lin Sheng used the stupidest, simplest, and most primitive method, which was to suppress his realm. Moreover, even if he tried his best to suppress his realm, a year was enough for him to reach demigod rank. As for the others, the biggest gains were probably Ming and Bing Air. They were demigod rank experts. Ming jumped from godly master to godly emperor, which was 2 big realms. Moreover, she was lucky that she did not encounter the seal. Perhaps it had something to do with the divine runes here, which prevented the seal from descending. As for Bing Air, she had also advanced from divine sun to divine king rank. As for Yin Nuoxing, as usual, he did not show any expression on his face. No matter how the others sensed, he was still a demon rank 2 seal for 10,000 years. Seeing that everyone was about to reach demigod rank, and some were even trying to reach demigod rank, he was not anxious at all. Everyone also knew that this guy was not as simple as the so-called demon rank 2 seal. Half a month ago, he had fought everyone here alone. Under the situation where he did not use any divine weapons, he still crushed everyone here. Yuan Shi, Nightmare, Yao Hua, and the others lay on the ground to express their calmness. This was because they were already used to it. No matter how strong they became, it seemed like they would never be able to defeat this big freak. They could not defeat this super freak in the past. Now that he had recovered part of himself and had mastered the mutated form of the 10th element, the element of chaos, it was even more impossible to defeat him. Lin Sheng's heroic demeanor as he fought against a group of heroes was forever imprinted in Lin Sheng's heart. That was the kind of export he yearned for. He was fearless of everyone. He also believed that this scene would forever be remembered by others. Chapter 9:17. Kacha. In a huge room surrounded by a sea of golden runes, the brilliant golden light turned into a sea of light that drowned everything. It was very beautiful, and there was an extremely sacred energy circulating in it. In the corner of the room, a group of people gathered together calmly. They weren't surprised at all when they saw this strange phenomenon. From time to time, they would glance at the only person who was still sitting cross-legged on the ground, and their eyes flickered with a faint light. It wasn't until a crisp sound suddenly rang out that everyone was stunned. This sound sounded as if something had broken. They turned their gazes. The star array disk that was originally floating in front of Yin Nuashing and was surrounded by many stars suddenly burst open with a crack that ran through the entire array disk. This woke him up and also stunned everyone. Bang! The star array disk didn't last for long. Cracks spread and quickly covered the entire array disk. With a crisp explosion, it suddenly exploded into pieces. The pieces floated in front of Yin Nuashing, and the colors of the star field still illuminated his stunned face. The brilliance of the sea of light didn't weaken, but Yin Nuashing was stunned. He stared at the shattered array disk in front of him like a fool. There was a touch of disbelief in his reddish-black eyes, and everyone was a little stunned. After a while, Ming and Xian hurriedly ran over and waved their hands in front of him. "Little star." Yin Nuashing shuddered. His body suddenly trembled as if an electric current had passed through it. He quickly hugged himself with his arms and shuddered, as if he was frozen. He took in a few cold breaths. I feel like I've seen something incredible." After a while, Yin Nuashing gently rubbed his hands on his forearms. His cheeks twitched, and he said something that confused everyone. "What's that?" Yuanshi couldn't help but ask. Yin Nuashing stared blankly at the shattered star array disk. He sighed and put it away, then said, "Well, it has nothing to do with the present. I just saw that in the near future, there suddenly appeared something that could make my life a mess and even change me. Well, I just couldn't see it clearly." In the near future? Everyone was suspicious. Based on this guy's perception of time, this not too long made them very suspicious. "What's the specific time frame?" Yin Nuashing calculated with her fingers and said, "Probably between 100 to 10,000 years. I can't see clearly. That something is extremely disruptive. Before my power of divine right is restored, and I can't use divine statue deduction. I can only see a vague approximate value." "Well, it won't happen in the near future. This won't affect you guys. It seems to be only related to me. At the very least, I have to be prepared. After all, that feeling after meeting that thing, my life has undergone a drastic change." It's very strange. Seeing Yin Nuashing's strange look, everyone looked at each other and then shrugged. Although they didn't know what he was talking about, they felt that he was very powerful. Moreover, they didn't seem to be able to get involved, so they would just let him worry about it for the time being. Everyone was already used to this kind of thing. In any case, he had been like this during this period of time. "Well, you could do your own thing. We'll cultivate for a while more." Yuanshi held the back of his head with both hands. In his mouth, he held a certain heavenly treasure that he had plundered from Yin Nuashing's treasury. It was shaped like a bamboo. Just by looking at the spiritual energy on it, one could tell that it wasn't something simple. He held it in his mouth and chewed gently. Speaking of which, it's been a year. Lin Sheng suddenly sighed, causing everyone's footsteps to stop. Everyone also sighed. It's been a year. This year wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. They had been cultivating here for a year. Most of their time was spent comprehending these golden runes. The rest of their time was spent listening to Yin Nuashing's preaching of the Tao. Moreover, it was a preaching of the Tao based on local materials. While they were at it, they would compare notes with each other. If they felt inflated after advancing, they could find that preaching Tao Grandmaster to torture themselves. In this half a year, almost all the people in the demon tier had advanced to the demigod tier. Many of the demigod tier had advanced to the beginner god tier, such as Xian, Yuan Shi, Nightmare, Chu Yingzhan, Ding Mengyu, and the others. Moreover, they had undergone their tribulations here. Their original bodies had been destroyed, and only their souls were left. After a difficult reconstruction, they had advanced to the beginner god tier. Congratulations, all of you are now god-level experts. Yin Nuashing said with a smile that was like a flower. Everyone was paralyzed on the ground, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Originally, they thought that there would be no tribulations in a place filled with divine runes, but in the end, the golden runes here directly transformed into various tribulations. They didn't have to worry about not having enough tribulations. There were also various ways to go through tribulations. Yuanshi was simply struck by lightning. Nightmare was a little more advanced, and he was struck by devil thunder. When Xian was undergoing her tribulation, The 5 elements were in a riot, as if trying to disintegrate her incomplete 5 elements origin from the inside. Chu Yingxian's tribulation was accompanied by tornadoes and earth-shattering. Ordinary people's tribulation to advance to the beginner god tier was basically accompanied by rolling thunder. Those who were abnormal all had their own reasons, and there were also differences in strength. When everyone was undergoing their tribulations together, it could be said to be fancy tribulations. Heavenly thunder and whatnot were no longer common. Now, they were doing something else. Elemental riot was more difficult, while heavenly thunder was less difficult. The former was also known as the elemental tribulation. Although both were tribulations, the degree was different, and the suffering that they had to endure was not the same. When the elemental tribulation appeared, even the elemental power that one had mastered would become one's enemy, and the elemental power outside would also be full of hostility. There would be internal and external troubles, and if one was not careful, one's body and soul would be destroyed. However, Yin Nuoxing was here, and she wouldn't leave them in the lurch. It feels a little unreal. Lin Sheng scratched his head. This kind of thing, other than imagining, I didn't have any other thoughts about it. Even if we really encountered the god's relic, it probably had nothing to do with us. There are so many strong people in this world, and the god's relic is the battlefield of some high-level gods. We're just demigods. A long time ago, I thought the same. Although I'm the young master of the Yuan family, I still thought that those high-end gods' relic and whatnot were the adults' business. Yuan, she also patted Lin Sheng's shoulder with some emotion and said, "It wasn't until I met Little Star that I realized that so many impossibilities were possible. The God's Dojo, the Forbidden Elemental Zone, the Forbidden Land, the Small World, the 5 Elemental Realm, and the God's Relic. These things sound impossible, but I've experienced them all. Meeting the boss is our biggest opportunity." Nightmare smacked his lips and couldn't help but say, Yuan, she stared at him. "At that time, you were still fighting with Little Star." Nightmare scratched his head awkwardly and laughed. "At that time, I just wanted to compare notes with the boss. It wasn't as serious as he said." The title of the spirit-receiving godly body, recognized as the #1 person in the younger generation. Isn't it exciting just thinking about it? But how can 2 moves be enough? Nightmare said excitedly. Yeah, someone would compare notes with Little Star whenever he had time. He's been beaten so many times. Yuanqi looked at him strangely. This guy would go and spar with Little Xingxing whenever he had the time. Every time, he would be killed by Little Xingxing effortlessly. He did not even consider his own strength. Little Xingxing's hand had the power to kill gods. Master, Father also said that young Master Yun has the power to disturb the future. At that time, he was only a spirit-receiving godly body. Only a spirit-receiving godly body, Qin Yin said softly. She usually addressed the Qin family's master, who was her father, as the master in front of outsiders. However, there were no outsiders here, so she changed her way of addressing him. "Oh, old Master Qin Hai thinks so too." Yuanqi sighed and turned to look at Qin Yin. He teased, "Speaking of which, you and Little Star have a wedding ceremony, right?" Boom! Qin Yin was stunned. A blush appeared on her pretty face. On Yin Nuoxing's side, there was a loud boom. Something exploded. Everyone was stunned. Had he been listening to their conversation all along? Yin Nuoxing coughed twice. The billowing smoke dissipated, revealing her beautiful, fair face. Yin Nuoxing widened her scarlet eyes and glared at Yuan Shi. "Can you King talk about something that won't disturb my state of mind?" Yuan Shi chuckled and nodded. He then said to Qin Yin, "This is a future god. Moreover, there's a 99% chance that he'll become a god with super potential. What do you think?" Bang! Qin Yin blinked at Mei Mao. How could she not hear the teasing in Yuan Shi's words? She immediately turned her head and said softly, "We still have to see what young Master Yin thinks. My family is too small. I might not be worthy of this future god." Boom! "Hurry up. Set a time quickly. Get rid of the boss. There's no time like the present. Why don't you return to the Qin family after the Mystic Realm trip and let old Master Qin Hai host it?" We'll bring our stuff over to celebrate with you too. Rumble, what the F asterisk CK? Yin Nuashing finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He jumped up and roared furiously. Go to the side where it's cool and stay there. Don't disturb me. Xian and Ming saw this and could not help but burst out laughing. Little Star is so cute when he's flustered and exasperated, like a kitten with its hair standing on end. Ming could not help but laugh as she pointed at his long hair. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Yin Nuashing was so angry that he jumped up from the ground. He pointed at the crowd and stammered for a long time. His face was red as he roared, "Fine, you win." Then he strode to the side. "I'll scram. Everyone, he's throwing a tantrum." Xian and Ming turned around and gestured for everyone to be quiet. Then they jogged to catch up with Yin Nuashing, who had not gone far. Bing thought for a while and also followed. When he heard the soft footsteps behind him, Yin Nuashing could only stop helplessly. This place was so big, and this place was only so big. No matter where he ran, there would be people following him. It was the same no matter where he went. After moving a little further away, he simply sat down. A thumb-sized golden bead floated in front of him. On the bead, there were strange patterns drawn by blue lines. It looked like a golden elixir with elixir patterns. However, this bead did not emit a strange fragrance. Instead, there was a familiar energy circulating inside. The golden light flickered slightly, making the golden runes here brighter. "Brother, what's that?" Ming stopped beside Yin Nuashing and looked at the golden bead floating in front of him. He blinked at Mei Mao curiously and asked. Yin Nuashing pointed to the sky and then drew a circle in the air. He said, "It's the carrier of all the golden runes in this space." After thinking for a while, he continued, "I'm imprinting the information contained in these golden runes. It's almost done. Once I'm done, I can leave." Yuan Shi and the others, who were slowly following behind, heard the word leave and couldn't help but jump up. They jumped in front of Yin Nuashing and said in surprise, "We can leave." "When?" Yin Nuashing looked at him speechlessly and said, "We can leave now. I've already activated the golden runes according to the rules. Now, the door can be opened at will. I'm just recording the information in these golden runes." After saying that, Yin Nuashing looked at him with a strange expression. "You've already experienced the effect of cultivation in this place. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Maybe there won't be such a good place for you to cultivate in the future. In the ancient times, I've seen a few gods' spiritual bodies. Others could bear the loneliness of tens of thousands of years and cultivate to become high-level gods. Once they were born, their names would shake the world. You, on the other hand, are impetuous and can't sit still." Hearing Yin Nuashing's words, Yuan Shi's handsome face turned red. He scratched his cheek and said with a dry smile, "Hey, other people have their own cultivation methods. I have my own cultivation method. If I just cultivate and do nothing for tens of thousands of years, wouldn't I be bored to death? To put it bluntly, you have to have a mentality to live through life. You can't be anxious." Yin Nuashing looked at him indifferently and then sighed. "As long as you like it. The door is already open. If you want to go out first. I still have something to do. A year has passed in the Void Mystery Land. If there's anything, hey, there's no hurry. Anyway, we'll just wait. You work first. I'll cultivate for a while more." Before he could finish, Lin Sheng interrupted him. Then he quickly sat down cross-legged, calmed his heart, and focused his mind. Gradually, he entered the state of cultivation. That's right. There's no hurry. Slow down. Seeing that everyone had sat down to cultivate, Yin Nuashing glanced at Yuan Shi. The latter scratched his long hair awkwardly and didn't say anything. He could only smile and sit down to cultivate. This time, it didn't take long. In just 3 days, Yin Nuashing recorded all the information in this huge room into the golden bead and put into the pendant. This was the lifetime cultivation experience of a heavenly god. It was very useful and had a fatal attraction to many emperor gods. Isn't the demon world about to be born? At this time, it shouldn't be a problem to make some people in the Nine Gods Temple stronger by a few levels. When everyone asked how he planned to use this thing, Yin said with a smile, "With my methods, it's quite fun to forcefully raise a dozen Emperor gods to the level of gods. Well, let's see what Sister Jean and the others choose. I won't interfere." Everyone smiled bitterly. When you first said that, you already had the idea of interfering. Why did you suddenly want to mourn for the powerhouses of the demon world? Was it really the right decision to be born this time? If they encountered such a demon, would they be played to death? In these 3 days, everyone once again consolidated their rapidly increasing strength. When a group was ready, Yin pushed open the door blocked by the golden runes. The golden runes quietly dissipated and the light dimmed. As the runes on the door dimmed, the golden runes in the huge room also dimmed in an instant. They merged into the ground and disappeared. This place became a black room with nothing. Nothing existed. It was as if the golden runes had disappeared. After leaving, they won't appear again. This is a one-time opportunity. However, it will last forever until the people inside come out. Yin sighed and waved at the empty door. Goodbye. As if they were bidding farewell to the ancient god, everyone also bowed silently. They didn't know who this god powerhouse was. They followed Yin words and didn't look at the memories of his life. Therefore, no one knew who he was. Perhaps Yin knew, but he didn't say anything. The reason was that it was useless for them to know. Although it was reasonable, they still felt a knot in their hearts. This time, the entire divine spirit palace dimmed. The field of vision also became purely decorative. Any movement made here would no longer affect the starry sky. There was nothing special about this divine spirit relic anymore. From the beginning to the end, there was only one path, a path that led to that place. They spent a year there. It was very fast, but also very long. However, the things that happened were earth-shattering. Many people from the half-demon rank enter the upper 3 seals of the demon rank. The demigod rank advanced to the beginner god rank. As for Yin, he was still tragically in the 2nd seal of the demon rank. He was the lowest rank here, but no one dared to underestimate him. The power of the 2nd seal of the demon rank was more than enough to deal with them. After coming out of the divine spirit relic, she couldn't help but stretch. He looked at the empty sky and took a deep breath of fresh air. He had an intoxicated look on his face. The air outside is still the best. Speaking of which, we didn't do much in this trip to the hidden territory. Lin Sheng wrinkled his nose and said, "We went to the 5-elemental realm for almost 2 months. Half a month after we came back, we entered the divine spirit relic again. This time, it was even more exaggerated. We were in there for a year. Isn't the so-called hidden territory trip just the same? We came in to find opportunities to improve our strength. What else do you want? Or do you think this trip isn't special enough? Do you think you didn't improve enough? Do you want to reach the beginner god rank in one go?" Yin looked at Lin Sheng and said calmly. Everyone was stunned. The change in his voice surprised them. "You became so cold as soon as you came out." Lin Sheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. No, it's just a sigh." Everyone rested on the grass outside for a while. Little Purple Soul was still hanging on Ming's wings, laughing and playing around. The latter didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This girl kept playing with her wings. She couldn't scold or say anything, so she could only let her be. Yin looked up and was suddenly stunned. Her eyes gradually became deep, as if she had discovered something. Everyone sighed helplessly. They couldn't help but complain in their hearts that they didn't get to rest. Then, they looked at Yin. "Tell us, what's wrong?" "Oh, I just wanted to sigh. It seems that the hidden territory trip has come to an end." Yin pointed at the sky. She was gliding around in the sky, and then she stopped in one direction. Little Purple Soul looked up excitedly. Her giggling voice surprised everyone. Brother, the blue light in the sky has all turned golden. There's only one red spot left." Chapter 9:18. Under the distorted starry sky, there was a golden grid of energy veins. A year ago, after Yin and the others reversed the energy nodes in the god's relic, it gradually became what it was now. Wherever the golden energy flowed, the blue energy veins turned golden. Even the red energy veins automatically turned golden. According to Yuanshi's words, it was like a master key. If one accidentally touched it, the entire mystery land would start to turn. Well, although I know that after a year, there's no change in the mystery land, but the energy veins have almost changed by themselves. It is a good thing, but after leaving the God's Relic after a year, no one came to the outside of the God's Relic. The space in this place was chaotic, and there were no signs of entering the God's Relic. No one would guard a seemingly worthless palace for nothing. A year was enough to wear out most people's patience. In the chaotic area, the number of God's Relic and the number of God's palaces was much less than in other areas. The most important one was the God's Relic, which caused this area to be particularly deserted. Very few people were there. The huge pit left by the big explosion a year ago still surrounded the chaotic area. It was very spectacular and also very scary. Someone had gone into this huge pit before. It was said that they had to fly down for 2 hours before they saw the bottom of the huge pit. It was a strange and chaotic area. If they had to describe it, it was the same as what Yin Nuashing and the others had seen when the void was blown up. It was chaotic and chaotic, just like when Order was born. To put it simply, this mystery land had been blown up. At this time, the person who caused the big explosion was calmly looking at the creature that he had created. He couldn't help but sigh. People go crazy when they come. I won't take the blame for this. It's the elements of chaos' fault. I didn't do anything wrong. It's the world's fault. They had already left the chaotic region. The energy reaction of the elemental chaos on Yun Nuashing's body suddenly dropped to 0, and he fell to the ground. However, Ming reacted quickly and caught him. When everyone came to their senses, he was no longer as cold and domineering as when he used the elemental chaos. His current carefree manner was the familiar Yin Nuashing that everyone was familiar with. But, Ming, you're almost strangling me to death. Yin Nuashing's face turned green as she patted her arms that were wrapped around her stomach. Ming's pretty face reddened, and she hurriedly relaxed a little. I was afraid that Big Brother would fall, so Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. Are you afraid that I will break your brother's waist if I fall? I didn't treat you badly, did I? The Void Zone and the Chaos Zone were on opposite sides of each other. The explosion had also dug out 1/3 of the Void Zone. However, there was no longer any elements of chaos in this place. The dark elements were also condensed in that region and the 16 sacred objects. It was impossible for them to appear in these places. Moreover, the power of the dark elements only changed the rules. There was no discomfort brought by the powerful force here. The space has begun to fluctuate weekly. It has been going on for a long time. We are definitely not the first to notice it. Yin Nuashing looked up for a moment, then lowered her head again. She squeezed her palm as if she sensed something. The space factor is vibrating weakly. This feels like, after pondering for a while, Yin Nuashing frowned suspiciously. It's like the premonition that the innermost space is about to be exposed. At that time, when I saw the small, collapsed world in the eye of the storm, it gave me such a feeling at the last moment. Is this arcane realm also a small world? Hearing her words getting more and more complicated, everyone shook their heads in distress. They did not quite understand what she was talking about. Even Ming, who had been in that world before, did not feel the feeling of the inner space being exposed. He did not understand what she meant, but it was not easy to know. In short, this world was very strange. After all, this void arcane realm was destroyed by the Shadow Emperor and Purple Knight in the late stage of the Primordial Age. Logically speaking, not even a speck of it should be left. What is the arcane realm? Lin Sheng could not help but ask. Is it a small world? Or is it a hidden space? There are many types. The arcane realm could be a space created by some powerful treasure of heaven and earth. After countless years of growth, it would become a sacred place filled with natural treasures. It could also be a small world, a complete small world, or a small world that failed to evolve. There are also spiritual worlds, and other worlds that dissipate with the passing of their owners without control. If the owner had modified the spiritual world and spiritual world while they were alive to contain a little bit of the power of the natural order, their existence would slowly be exposed to the world and become an ownerless object. It would become a natural area that retains its original appearance. If it is not destroyed by a powerful force, it would never dissipate, Yin Nuashing said. In short, these hidden secret areas that are not on the map of the realm of the gods are all arcane realms. The difference between arcane realms and small worlds is that most arcane realms do not have life. There are some small worlds that have failed to evolve, and the life in them may have been annihilated. Similarly, there are still some things left behind that can be treated as arcane realms. It is easy to mistake the two, but once a small world is born with a small world core, it will be very different. There are tens of millions of arcane realms left behind in the realm of the gods, and some of them might be small worlds that were once destroyed. Yuanshi scratched his head and asked, you just said that this arcane realm has many layers of space, right? What is in the innermost layer of space? The things that this world wants to hide. Yin Nuashing raised his chin, looked down at this world, and said, the deepest secrets of this secret realm are all buried in the innermost space. This is also the case for small worlds. If this secret realm is not naturally formed, then there must be something hidden in the innermost space. And in fact, this Jiesu secret realm is also not naturally formed. From what I can see, this should be a small world created by a powerful race in the far old era, a world of its own. When I entered this Jiesu realm, I found many traces left behind by people. The scars of war that covered the entire arcane realm, the cracks in the earth, the things left behind by the high-ranking gods were all hidden in the second layer of space, the two different symbols left in the cave, and the ritual square. Yin Nuashing muttered. After a while, her eyes flickered slightly, and she raised her head and said, it should be like this. In the later stages of the primordial age, this small world was destroyed by the combined efforts of the Shadow Emperor and Violet Knight. Originally, this place should have been filled with many high-level gods, and these scars might have been left behind from that destructive battle. As for what Violet Knight said about this place being completely destroyed, either she remembered it wrong, or this world was not destroyed, and a part of it was used to block the attacks of the two gods, but the price was that part of the surface area of the land was sacrificed. Then, what happened after that should have happened many years later. In this deserted small world, the order and rules of heaven and earth were still the same as they were in the later stages of the primordial age, and the energy inside was enough to slowly restore the vitality of this world. After who knows how many years, another kind of life form was born from the fragments of this broken small world, which were the natives of this place. Those might have been the ruins of the demonic and immortal tears that we first saw. As for how they disappeared, whether they perished or left, I am not sure. After a long time, until now, this place has become the Jiesu mystic realm that we know of. Maybe this is what really happened in this world, but I still feel that there is something I can't quite put my finger on. Yin Nuashing frowned, rubbed her bangs, and murmured in a low voice. Is there something wrong? Xian asked. Yin Nuashing nodded hesitantly. The Shadow Emperor's memory is not very complete. I don't really remember why the Shadow Emperor destroyed this place. But at that time, he was already an Empyrean god, and he fought with the Empyrean god here and defeated him. After that, he used all his strength to completely tear apart the space, time, and all elements of this small world. Logically speaking, this world should no longer exist. If you can't figure it out, then don't waste your time thinking about it. Yuanshi shrugged and pointed into the distance. Look, there are people up ahead. There's also a strange black building. That place should be the Void Fortress. I also see that red thing. This must be the location of the final energy node. What's the use of converting it here? Maybe we'll open the final layer of space. Yin Nuashing shrugged. Maybe we will see the heart of the world. Everyone raised their heads. The black building that Yuan was talking about was very eye-catching. They could see it at a glance. Was that a huge city floating in midair. A palace? Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it a castle. It was flowing with a purple-black color, like the color of the void domain. A purple river and a black river flowed above and below it. They spiraled and intertwined in midair like silk ribbons, but they did not merge into the same color. If one looked at the source of the long river, they would be surprised to find that the source of the long river had appeared out of thin air. The purple river in the sky, if one looked up, felt like it was falling from the void domain in the sky. If one looked down at the black river, they would feel like it was connected to the black land. But if one chased the source of the long river to the source, they would realize that both rivers had appeared out of thin air. In the end, they spiraled 3 times around the castle-like palace before falling into the black land or the purple-black sky. Many people had already gathered in the sky. Most of them had rushed over because they knew of the existence of such a place. Many of them still felt regretful about the gods' relics and wanted to come here to try their luck. The Void Fortress was mentioned in many places in the Secret Realm. It was mentioned in many palace relics. Regardless of whether it was Yun Nuashing, the old generation, or the new generation, they all mentioned the Void Fortress. This kind of widespread fame gave a glimmer of hope to many people who did not gain much in the Secret Realm. However, when they thought about who had the key to open the Void Fortress, their hope turned into a faint sadness. At this moment, the owner of the key was swaggering over. Many people turned to look at him. Then, their expressions changed drastically. Most of them were shocked and terrified, while some were still holding on to a little hope. Most of them had such a reaction because they knew that Yun Nuashing was the owner of the key. They also knew that he had caused a huge explosion a year ago that blasted several groups of people into smithereens. Some of them were even present at the scene and were lucky enough to escape without being affected. Now, when they saw the Terror Maker with the hope that they were looking forward to, their expressions were so conflicted that they looked like people who had difficulty choosing whether to go left or right. Suddenly, the world, which originally had some noise, quieted down. It was so quiet that not a single sound could be heard. It was as if a ghost was haunted. Everyone's face turned green as they retreated a great distance. The air became deathly still again. It seems that the big news you caused a year ago is still fresh in people's minds. Chu Yingjian whispered into Yun Nuashing's ear and joked, "What does it have to do with me? That's the fault of the primal chaos elements. I'm not taking the blame. I'm really not taking the blame. You might not believe it, but they started first." Yun Nuashing shrank his neck and mumbled. When he said this, he felt a little guilty. The primal chaos elements were more or less the representative of the dark side in his heart. It would be a lie to say that it had nothing to do with him. He just didn't want to admit it. All right, there's no need to say anything else. Hurry up and open the door. You don't want to be watched like a monkey, right? Chu Yingjian pursed her lips and used her smooth chin to point at the Void Fortress in the distance. There was a layer of transparent purple-black barrier that contained the power of the void. Although they didn't know what would happen if they casually touched it, they could more or less guess how dangerous it was when they saw how obedient the people around them were. Yun Nuashing looked at her bitterly and shook his head helplessly. However, after a while, he narrowed his eyes and pondered for a while before saying, "Lin Sheng, there's still a group of people who aren't here, right?" Lin Sheng, who had been cozying up to Chu Yingjian the whole time, was stunned. "Ah, yes, they're not following us. They're wandering around in the mystic realm." Yun Nuashing nodded and looked around. Then, she laughed evilly in her soul and said, "Hurry up and contact them now. Tell them to head to various areas and make preparations. No matter what, let's give it a try. It'll be great if we succeed. If we don't, we'll see." After saying this, Yun Nuashing ignored Lin Sheng, who had a strange expression on his face, and touched the pendant. What looked like a key was actually a long spear. Furthermore, it was about 10 feet thick and 40 to 50 feet long. If it wasn't for the spearhead, one wouldn't be able to tell that it was a spear. What kind of person would have to be able to lift this spear? The moment the huge spear appeared, the people around them retreated in a circle. They looked as if they were looking at the Grim Reaper. Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This long spear was purple-black in the Void Fortress. It was the key to the Void Fortress. As for how to open it, it seemed very simple. Just throw it out, Buzz. Yin Nuashing held the end of the spear with one hand and lifted it up a little with the other. Then, she shouted softly and threw the 10-meter-long spear out. The speed was so fast that it didn't seem like it was from a person who didn't have the strength to catch chicken. In fact, Yin Nuashing only assisted a little. The long spear was sucked into the transparent barrier of the fortress. There was a clear buzzing sound. Then a medium-sized hole appeared in the transparent barrier. Yin Nuashing clapped her hands and raised her chin at everyone. She said, "Follow me closely. Let's go. I think this is the last part of our journey in the mystic realm." Chapter 919. The Black Castle gave off an ancient aura as it floated in midair. The purple sky and the black earth flowed endlessly on both sides of the castle. The solemn castle had an extremely clean structure. There were many windows that looked like the city walls. It gave off a retro feeling. That might not be right. After all, this was indeed a product from ancient times. It was so ancient that it even resembled the primitive times when humans could only use simple stone weapons and shallow vitality to resist wild beasts. In the entire God's realm, there were not many products as ancient as this black castle. A large hole was pierced through the transparent purple-black barrier. The savage aura descended from the sky, causing countless people to hold their breaths. Those who could not withstand the aura were forced to descend from the sky onto the black ground. They had a half kneel to barely withstand the omnipresent pressure. The pressure directly affected their souls, causing them to have no choice but to submit. Buzz, buzz, buzz. An intense buzzing sound resounded in the sky. It was extremely ear-piercing, so ear-piercing that it caused a group of people to involuntarily grimace in pain. At this moment, a large part of the sky had already emptied out. Most of the people were unable to withstand this barbaric pressure. They either retreated far away or knelt on the ground. Only a group of people were still standing firmly in the sky. However, looking at their unnatural appearance, it seemed that they had also been somewhat affected. The reason why they did not behave like the others was because of the person at the very front. The rumbling sound of thunder came from Yin Nuashing's body. The speed of the golden red blood flowing in his veins sped up countless times. In his soul, several imprints flashed. The imprint of a god and the bloodline of an ancient god circulated loudly, causing his body to emit a circle of bright light. It resisted the terrifying fluctuations coming from the void castle and protected the people around him at the same time. This has nothing to do with me. They acted spontaneously because they felt pressured. Feeling the strange gazes of the crowd, Yin Nuashing spread his hands innocently. The imprint of a god and the bloodline of a god were equivalent to a god, now that they encountered the fluctuations of a god's authority of the same level. How could they be willing to be oppressed? How could these mystical creatures, who were boundlessly powerful beyond the rules, allow others to rule over them? Everyone looked at each other and spread out their hands, not saying anything. In any case, this kind of situation was not the first or second time. This fellow was a protective talisman, a mascot. No matter where he was, he would be able to protect everyone. If his portrait was hung on the door, it would definitely be able to exorcise evil spirits, clang. While everyone was conversing, the large door in the middle of the huge, ancient castle suddenly rumbled open in front of everyone's eyes. The ripples from the ancient castle became even more ferocious. At the same time, the rolling thunder on Yin Nuashing's body became even more violent. As the ripples from the ancient castle became stronger, the strange aura on Yin Nuashing's body became even more solid. In the end, many blurry shadows even condensed behind him. Immediately, an earth-shaking ripple with a terrifying power that could make thousands of Dao submit spread out in the sky with a rumble. Bang! Several extremely resplendent, divine, right ripples erupted from Yin Nuashing's body. They spread out in all directions like a shockwave, affecting everything in the surroundings indiscriminately. Even Ming Ming and the others beside him felt an irresistible power, almost causing them to lose control of themselves. Fortunately, the eruption of absolute power only lasted for an instant, causing their power to stagnate for a moment. However, the ancient castle had taken on almost 90% of the divine right impact, causing its light to dim significantly. The large door completely opened with a bang. In the end, it completely stabilized with a loud bang. The ripples that had been emitted earlier were like a mouse that had encountered a cat, repelled by an even more powerful force. Rumble. When the door of the castle was completely opened, the void domain in the sky suddenly surged with huge waves. The entire void domain became chaotic and tumbled like a raging sea. Even the sky was trembling. Countless huge abyssal cracks that were hundreds of thousands of feet long appeared on the black ground. The people in the sky and on the ground had been pushed far away by this force. Those who were still standing there were some beginner god-level experts. Other than them, only Yin Nuoxing and the others were still standing. Those who had been pushed away could only sigh. They looked at the void fortress from afar and could not help but shake their heads and sigh. It seemed that the last void fortress had nothing to do with them. Just the opening of the door had caused such a huge commotion. When they entered, they would not even know how they died. After the door opened, the entire void fortress was filled with golden lines that shuttled across the entire fortress. The strange ripples calmed down the divine authority power. Then, a golden light suddenly shot out from the door and enveloped Yin Nuoxing and the others. "Let's go." The golden light enveloped the group of people. Yin Nuoxing said to Ming Ming. Then, the group of people rushed out almost at the same time. They followed the golden light and rushed into the black castle. When the other people who were still standing in this area saw this, their minds moved as they rushed towards the golden light at lightning speed. Bang! However, what shocked them was that the person who moved first crashed into the illusory golden light screen. The dull sound made the people who heard it grimace. It was really painful. Damn it, why can't I go in? That person was dizzy from the crash. He rubbed his head and looked at the golden light channel in confusion. Yin Nuoxing and the others had already rushed in. Why couldn't they go in? Are you out of your mind? The holder of the Void Fortress key can enter 2 hours in advance. The others can only wait for 2 hours if they want to enter. Oh, damn it. 2 hours? Everything must have been eaten clean, right? That person roared in exasperation. The others looked at him as if he was an idiot. They couldn't help but sigh. But if they don't open the door, you won't be able to enter for the rest of your life. Instantly, the sky quietened down. Everyone looked at the Void Fortress unwillingly. The golden light tunnel had already dissipated. The group of people from Yin Nuo planet had also successfully charged into the Void Fortress, leaving the group of people outside to stare and sigh. If they did not open the door, they would never be able to enter. However, the person who opened the door would have the right to enter and explore for 2 hours first. This debt could be considered settled, but it would cause them to feel stifled. So what now? Let's wait. What do we do if we don't wait? Look at those who haven't reached beginner god level. They are all kneeling in the distance and can't even say a word. You should be glad that you can still stand here after reaching beginner god level. Maybe they didn't gain anything in these 2 hours. After entering, we can still gain something. Even if they have gained a lot, it's impossible for them to search everything clean. We can still pick up some leftovers. Let's see what they can do. This sentence made everyone feel uncomfortable. However, there was nothing they could do. They had already entered. They could only stare blankly from outside. Moreover, with Yin Nuoxing and the other's strength, no one had the courage to reason with them. If anyone went up, they would be lucky if the other party didn't give them a punch each. What reason could there be? It didn't exist. In this world, the bigger fist was the truth. If they forced that lunatic to use Sun again, they wouldn't even be able to escape in the Void Fortress. Rich starlight shone in this place from all directions. The starlight cast by the distant stars hundreds of millions of years ago finally reached this place and shrouded this very strange space. At a certain moment, the starlight began to gather at a point. Looking back at the place where the starlight was projected from, one could see an extremely bright sea of light. The entire space became abnormally bright, and this light continued to become brighter and brighter. Puff! In an instant, there was a puff sound like a balloon leaking air. The light that filled the entire space dissipated in an instant. The starlight, the star field, and the stars all disappeared. The bright sea of light also calmed down at this moment. What appeared here again was a void of darkness. There was nothing but a thin layer of light curtain that shrouded a large area. In this dark place, there was a huge floating island floating in the light curtain. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to call it a stone corridor, because this floating island was a stone corridor from the beginning to the end. It floated in the void, lonely and endless. The darkness and loneliness that had lasted for several dozen epochs was suddenly shattered by a dazzling ray of light. A golden space gate suddenly appeared at the very front of the stone corridor. Space suddenly twisted, and the space gate turned into a huge tunnel. Afterwards, figures suddenly shot out from it and landed on the stone corridor. The inside of this void fortress. Wow, it really is the void. As soon as Chu Yingxian landed, she impatiently looked around, but when she discovered that she was in a pitch-black void domain, she couldn't help but hang her head dejectedly. She inexplicably let out a disheartened sigh, causing everyone to be baffled. What did you think this place was like? Yin Nuoxing glanced at her and also looked around. This stone corridor was very spacious. If they stood directly on it, it would not be an exaggeration to say that they had arrived on a huge floating island. However, if they looked down from above, they would discover that this was a stone corridor. It was unknown how long it was, but it was at least 10,000 feet wide. Between the stone corridor and the transparent barrier, there were many huge rock fragments floating. But the Void Fortress, this is something that has been repeatedly mentioned in the Jesu Mystery Land. It is said to be the last little mystery land. Now that it has been confirmed to be another god's relic, it should be more high-end and grand. Why does it look like this? Chu Yingxian wrinkled her nose and pointed her finger at the surroundings. There are only smelly rocks in the void. There is nothing here. As soon as she said there's nothing, Yuan Shi and the others looked at Chu Yingxian mockingly and said, "You think there's nothing here, but that doesn't mean there's nothing here. Even if there is something here, it's not something that we mortals can discover. This is something left behind by the gods, and it's not worth it. That's why it's faster to leave this kind of high-level secret to the professionals. Don't you think so, little Xingxing? Why don't you tell us what's here?" Yin Nuoxing looked at him strangely, scratched her head, and signaled Ming to let her go. Then, she walked forward to take a look. She turned to the others and spread her hands. "Sorry, there's really nothing here." Yuan Shi and Nightmare twitched on the ground. After a while, they struggled to get up. Little star, you were joking, right? I can joke about small things, but do you think I have ever joked about big things?" Yin Nuoxing sighed and looked at them quietly. Everyone laughed dryly. She was right. He never joked about big things. Even when it came to the mythological era, the ancient era, secret stories, and ancient things, he would become very serious and careful with his words. It was as if he was afraid that he would say something wrong. He was very careful and cautious. He was not as carefree as he usually was. This time, it was Chu Yingxian's turn to laugh. She covered her mouth with her hand and could not stop laughing. "You see, I told you that there is nothing here." Yuan Shi's cheeks twitched. If there is nothing here, wouldn't it be a waste to come here? Chu Yingxian was stunned. After a while, she shut her mouth. "All right, let's take a look first. This place is not meant to be a joke to others. The gods have their reasons for doing things, and the heavenly gods will not be careless. Saying that there is nothing here might mean that we have not found a way to open it. Have you forgotten about the divine relic that we stayed there for a year? Maybe it is the same here." Yin Nuoxing shrugged, raised her chin at the others, and said, "Anyway, let's take a look first." Everyone shrugged. At this moment, they were just here to suck up to the big boss. What else could they do other than follow? The group of people walked side by side, or in a pile on the wide stone corridor. Some parts of the corridor were not tightly closed. They might not be able to see anything from high altitude, but when they walked on the corridor, they could see many similar faults and potholes. From time to time, they had to jump over some cracks that were a few meters wide. In this strange place, their strength was suppressed to the point that it was almost non-existent. However, it was not a problem for them to jump over these cracks. It was just that poor Yin Nuashing had to be carried, jumped, or thrown over every time they passed by a crack. Tisk, precious goods should be handled with care. Don't you know that? Yin Nuashing rubbed her waist in pain and glared at Chu Yingzhan angrily. This girl actually kicked her over? What else? Do you want this fairy to carry you over? Chu Yingzhan crossed her arms in front of her chest and glanced at her. Then, she turned her head away with a snort. Yin Nuashing had tears in her eyes. She ran over to Ming pitifully and said in a sobbing voice, Ming, everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. How could these two fellows get into a fight at this time? Yuan, she even had the thought of jumping into the crack. However, under everyone's gazes, he calmly gave up on this extremely dangerous action. After all, they had passed through a transparent barrier under the crack. This was the void domain. With his current weak appearance, wouldn't he be killed by the void domain? They walked aimlessly for a long time. It felt like a very long time. When they looked back, they could no longer see where they came from. When they looked forward, they could only see nothing. There was only a broken stone path, broken stone walls, and debris all over the ground. Some of the huge meteorites floating outside the walls were as big as planets and gave off a very oppressive feeling. It's not like there's nothing here. Yin Nuashing suddenly opened her mouth and said something that everyone wanted to hear the most. Instantly, the group of people looked like hungry ghosts who had been starving for decades and saw a table of immortal banquets appear in front of them. Their eyes lit up as they turned their gazes. They saw Yin Nuashing waving his hand at the rock corridor outside. A wave of energy flashed and disappeared. Then a huge rock that was hundreds of feet in size suddenly floated over. Boom! The irregular rock landed on the rock corridor with a loud boom. Everyone felt that this place had sunk a few meters in the void domain. Bang! However, Yin Nuashing was obviously not someone who was interested in rocks. He only glanced at it and then slapped it into pieces. A large pile of rock fragments rumbled and erupted like a volcanic eruption. Dust and rock fragments splashed all over the ground. After a while, when the dust settled, everyone saw that there was a golden object in Yin Nuashing's hand that they had not seen before. It looked like a golden rock. It was oval-shaped and exuded a powerful energy. It looked like a rock, but it also felt soft like a piece of meat. It was about the size of 2 fists. Holding this soft rock-like object in his hand, Yin Nuashing looked at it. Then he turned to Bing Er and said, Bing Er, open your mouth. Bing Er was stunned for a moment. While she was screaming, Yin Nuashing shoved the meat into Bing Er's mouth at lightning speed. The latter was so shocked that she didn't even have time to react before she swallowed the golden rock in her stomach. Everyone was stunned. She ate it? Oh, you want it too? Looking at everyone's strange gazes, Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment. Then he waved his hand. Humans can't afford this thing. It belongs to the shifter race. As for its specific function, before Yin Nuashing could finish speaking, Bing Er's pretty face suddenly turned red. Even her ears were red. A layer of pink appeared on her white skin. She opened her mouth and burped. Her blue-gold eyes were a little dazed. After a while, with a bang, she suddenly turned from a great beauty into a palm-sized, 4-winged blue dragon. Then, she fell softly from midair. Yin Nuashing reached out and caught it. After thinking for a while, he placed it on his head. The little dragon was still rolling around on his head. Its 4 claws grabbed his long, colorful hair and rolled around. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing helplessly spread his hands. It's like it's drunk. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, they didn't think that this thing was used to make shifter race experts drunk. It was just that Yin Nuashing couldn't be bothered to explain the specifics. They also couldn't be bothered to ask. However, after this incident, everyone paid more attention to their surroundings. They were afraid that they would miss something. However, even if they paid more attention, they wouldn't be able to see anything. Not everyone was like Yin Nuoxing, who had that kind of unscientific perception. Just as everyone was paying attention to their surroundings, two huge walls quietly appeared in front of them. Chapter 9:20. The giant walls that appeared on both sides were huge walls with the color of the star field. Dots of starlight twinkled, and it was no different from the real starry sky. Everyone could even feel the rich power of the stars, just like the field of vision they saw in the god's ruin. However, there were no shrunken stars here, and all the starlight was twinkling in the distance. The two walls were very tall, as if they reached straight into the void domain. No one stopped because of the appearance of the two walls. It was purely because the big boss in front of them was still walking forward slowly without stopping. He had been using his weak sensing power to sense the surroundings. Since he didn't stop, the others had no reason to stop either. The group walked step by step on the rock corridor that was unknown how long it was like taking a stroll. By the way, in the end, Yuan-Shi couldn't hold it in anymore and said, "Why do the gods like to hang the starry sky in their palaces?" The god's ruin had the whole palace filled with field of vision that pointed to the starry sky. This seems to be a god's ruin too. When I saw the void domain, I thought it would be a little different until I saw these two giant starry sky walls. This is very starry sky. This is very godly. Yuan-Shi's cheeks twitched. Everyone was also very curious. They had looked at the starry sky above their heads countless times, but they couldn't see anything strange about it. When the weather was clear at night, they would look up at the sky when they were bored. The bright stars and the bright eternity. They didn't think much of it before, but when they returned from the 5 elemental realms, they felt that the starry sky was a little deeper. Perhaps it was because they saw a miracle in the starry sky, but even so, they still didn't understand why the gods paid so much attention to the starry sky above their heads. Some people just like it because they like it, like me. Yin Nuoxing pointed at herself, then pondered for a while. She looked at the giant starry sky wall beside them and said, "Some people can feel something by looking up at the starry sky." The Celestial Master also likes to study the stars. The Celestial Master can shift the stars. There are many more, but they all point to the same clue. There are secrets in the starry sky. Whether they are known or unknown, there must be something in the starry sky that attracts the gods to explore. On the other hand, these gods who have poured their life's work into the starry sky also like to hide some things in the places they have poured their life's work into. Yin Nuoxing paused and walked towards a huge wall. Then, his expression suddenly changed. It became a little fierce and serious, and an aura that could make even the heavens and earth submit to him slowly emerged from his body. If you want to open it, you'll need some special methods. For example, the appearance of the godly power caused everyone's cheeks to tremble slightly. They hurriedly retreated a little. Who said that this fellow was powerless after being suppressed to the emptiness realm? Didn't they see that he had been using his sensing ability all this while? Now, he actually used the godly power in such an exaggerated manner. Was there any way to judge him in this world? Yin Nuoxing did not know what they were thinking. She walked to the wall and placed her hand on the wall. She took a deep breath and sent her divine right into the wall. "Please show yourself." Buzz. The 4 words she muttered in a low voice caused the huge wall to suddenly tremble. A golden color appeared at the bottom of the huge wall. The golden color doubled in size within a few breaths. Then it suddenly trembled and swept out in all directions of the huge wall. It was like countless threads that were rapidly shuttling through the star field. Moreover, it quickly spread forward. In just a short moment, an incomparably huge picture was woven on the huge wall of stars. It was a picture drawn with the entire starry sky and countless stars. A picture? No, this is more like a deduction. There are some faint traces in the huge picture that flowed with a strange power. Yin Nuoxing murmured and rubbed her fingers together. It did not take her much effort to identify the real situation of the picture. Then, she turned around and looked at everyone. Seeing that they were somewhat confused, she could not help but be stunned. She hurriedly opened her mouth and shouted, "Wake up! Her shout contained a soul attack and the godly power. It directly collided with everyone's souls, causing their faces to suddenly turn pale. The confusion in their eyes immediately disappeared. Everyone was stunned. A moment later, a neat row of sweat flowed down their faces. They panted slightly, and only after a while did they tremble and wipe away the sweat on their faces. The group of people packed up in a slight panic. They patted their chests and took deep breaths as if they had been greatly stimulated. However, the scene just now was indeed quite stimulating for them. What has happened? I seem to have seen something incredible. Was it an illusion? Yuan-Shi panted as he wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with his sleeve and asked. Hearing this, Yin Nuoxing was also stunned. She thought for a moment, but did not answer first. Instead, she asked, What did you see? A grand sacrifice. Countless gods from all over the universe kneeling and worshipping. The power of all living beings. Oh, the sun, the moon, and the stars. I don't really remember. I remember just now. Yuan-Shi tried to recall in a daze for a while. After a moment, he shook his head. He could not remember. Yin Nuoxing also asked the others, and the answers she received were similar. She vaguely pieced it together and obtained the same thing, a grand sacrifice. The sky god stood on a high platform and gathered the power of all living beings from all over the universe. As for what he wanted to do, no one could remember. They only seemed to remember just now, but they could not remember it after being shaken awake by Yin Nuoxing. You guys are quite bold. This is one of the sky god's divine statue deduction. The profoundness in each stroke is enough for all non-gods to comprehend for a lifetime. You guys entered a passive state of enlightenment so naturally. Do you want to disappear from this world? Yin Nuoxing put her hands on her hips and said angrily, You guys were almost wiped out just now. The enlightenment left behind by the sky god is fine, but this is a primitive deduction. It's very easy for you to fall into it and never come back. From now on, seal your senses. You can't touch this yet. Looking at Yin Nuoxing's unprecedentedly serious expression, everyone could only smile awkwardly. The strange state they fell into just now did not make them feel enlightened. Instead, they felt dizzy, as if a part of their soul was empty. What is it saying? After sealing their senses, the golden picture did not feel as strange as before when they looked at it again. It was as if the golden picture that appeared on the wall of stars was just a very ordinary picture. Even so, they could see some very profound traces on it. However, they did not dare to sense it. They were afraid that they would fall into it and never come back. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and retreated. When the wall appeared in front of them, she stopped. Yin Nuoxing looked up at the golden picture of stars and said, What you guys saw should be the end. This is just the beginning. Take your time and look at it. This was a series of very simple pictures. It was just that every stroke was different. The others could not see anything, but Yin Nuoxing could see many traces of deduction. It was a very simple picture. It recorded a small family that once existed in the divine world. There was a person in the family. The gender of this person was not recorded. That person's appearance was also very vague. What was recorded was only bits and pieces of the person's cultivation path. Some were dry, and some were hot-blooded. Occasionally, they would encounter setbacks and also escape from death. It seemed like every bit of their life was recorded. They crossed the mortal rank, immortal rank, demigod rank, initial divine rank, and all the way until they reached the post-divine rank. At the post-divine rank, another very special life form appeared on this golden picture. It had a pair of demonic wings on its back and long horns on both sides of its forehead. This was a demon, a post-divine expert of the demon race. It was a powerful demon god that looked down on the world. In the picture, it was fighting a great battle with this demon god. Moreover, the battlefield seemed to be in the demon world. The battle between the two of them destroyed half of the demon world. That demon god faced the sky and roared. The scarlet sky collapsed and the earth shattered. In the end, the two of them fought in the void, causing the void to sink bit by bit. The demon god seized the opportunity and used an extremely powerful attack to destroy the void along with that demon god. Not even a trace of its divine soul was left behind. When they saw that kind of great battle, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Their breathing became hurried. It was another great battle between gods. Even if they had seen it in the mausoleum world, this battle seemed to be even more thorough. It was as if they were fighting to the death. After the battle ended, it seemed to have suffered heavy injuries. According to the picture, it stayed in the destroyed void for many years to recover from its injuries. After passing through this picture, it once again returned to the divine world after an unknown number of years. The battle between the divine world and demon world was still difficult to distinguish. It was not the only god that appeared, and it was not the only god that fell. The divine world has really been plagued with disasters since ancient times. Yuanshi couldn't help but scratch his head. This battle is too tragic. It engulfed the entire divine world. Heaven and earth were torn apart, and the space collapsed. I really have to sigh. It's really not easy for the divine world to still be alive. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This should be something that happened in the later period of the ancient antiquity era. As for whether it was the 70th era or so, I don't really remember. The Shadow Emperor's memory is a little blurry, but one thing is for sure. When the great battle broke out, the Shadow Emperor already existed at that time. Because of the blurry memory, he witnessed the battle but didn't participate. After all, he was still quite weak at that time. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. Looking down, its figure was still hazy and unclear. The divine world was in a mess. The flames of war had been extinguished, and there was still no victory or defeat. How many people had died in the divine world? No one knew the true meaning of this war. It had been passed down from a long time ago. The meaning was simple. Both sides wanted to live on, and both sides wanted to live more comfortably. For this, they did not hesitate to fight to the death. The realm of the gods had participated in this war. The realm of monsters and demons had been stopped, but it could not be said that the realm of the gods had won. It could only be said that both sides had suffered. However, the picture didn't stop here. It continued. The picture in the middle was quite abstract. On a giant star wall, there was an ocean and a giant wall standing on the ocean, the barrier between the sea of time and the primordial realm. Yin Nuoxing stretched out his hand and pointed at the ocean and the giant wall. The aura of time seeped out from the picture, and it was completely transmitted. He could feel it. If he couldn't understand the meaning of this, then he would have lived in vain. Yes, the barrier between the sea of time and the primordial realm. Yuanshi nodded. Then, he turned his head and looked at him. What does it mean? I took a look at the back. It's a little abstract. It seems that after the battle, the picture at the back has become abstract. I don't quite understand it. What is the meaning of these two things displayed now? Probably. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while, then said, it's probably the first major realm of the post-god level. Only by reaching that level can one walk fearlessly on the sea of time and travel to various time periods and timeline worlds. One can even pass through the barrier of the primordial realm. Don't be fooled by how easy it was when we went to the 5 primordial realms. That was the back door. We borrowed the power of the primordial realm to pass through the barrier of the primordial realm. Once we master the power of the primordial realm, even emperor gods can cross realms. But if we don't master the power of the primordial realm, we have to reach the first major realm of the post-god level before we can use our power to penetrate the barrier of the primordial realm and cross realms. Everyone nodded. Then they looked at the picture behind the sea of time and the barrier of the primordial realm. A scepter appeared. It was a very strange scepter. At the top of the scepter was a galaxy. Countless stars floated on the bright light disk. Everyone looked at Yin Nuoxing, indicating that they couldn't understand it at all. In the end, Yin Nuoxing also spread his hands helplessly. I don't know what this thing is trying to express either. The group of people fell to the ground. They twitched for a long time and almost couldn't get up. Looking further back, the scepter began to emit a bright light. Around the scepter, there were many more people. They knelt beside the scepter devoutly. Traces of mysterious aura emanated from those people, but they didn't gather on the scepter. Instead, they dissipated and merged into the space. In the picture behind, the scepter's light was even brighter, and the supreme majesty it emitted was even more powerful. The people around it were even lined up in a circle. Some were so excited that they shed tears. Some were hugging something that looked like a book. The pen in their hands danced wildly, as if they were recording something. A strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. It was as if thousands of rays of light penetrated through the void. Looking into the distance, there seemed to be a sun, a moon, and stars revolving around it. On those stars, there was also an extremely powerful aura of life. The next scene was the one they had just seen. It stood on a high platform made of stars. Its arms were open, and the scepter floated in front of it. Its body was surrounded by a strong aura of stars. The sun, the moon, and the stars appeared at the same time. It was a wonder in the sky. Below the high platform, there was an endless sea of people. The ancient sacrificial syllables seemed to have penetrated the barrier of time and entered their ears without reservation. Those voices were repeatedly reciting a name, telling them the name of a god. A grand voice that penetrated the entire void rumbled and resounded in the entire void. It symbolized the birth of a god. All living things in the heavens should welcome the arrival of this god. This was also a faint respect that the void conveyed to this supreme expert, even if the void itself wasn't friendly with anything. The declaration of the god, announcing your arrival to the entire void. From now on, another god has been born. Yin Nuashing's soft voice made everyone tremble. The birth of God. Behind this picture was the last picture. The entangled golden threads were tangled messily in this place, forming a ball of wool. Many threads could be seen weaving in and out of the ball of wool, as if they were trying to untie the ball of wool. However, the more they shook, the worse it became. In the middle of this messy ball of wool, there stood a huge question mark. Even though it was also golden, it could be seen at a glance. Everyone stopped here. The picture had already ended. Everything was contained in this huge question mark. It seemed to have unintentionally revealed everyone's state of mind. What was this question mark? They were at a loss. They were at a loss. They didn't know what it meant or what it meant. They didn't know. The road has come to an end. Yin Nuashing sighed. She gently swiped her palm in front of her. The messy ball of wool changed in front of everyone's eyes. It turned into a broken staircase. It broke vertically from the center, as if it was responding to Yin Nuashing's words. The road has come to an end. What? The road has come to an end? What road? Everyone was at a loss. Yin Nuashing stretched out her hand and pointed at the beginning in the distance. She said, at the very beginning, he was just a mortal. Slowly, over a long period of time, he passed the mortal level, the immortal level, the demon level, the demigod level, the initial divine level, the later divine level, and finally stepped onto the high platform of the god realm. What road do you think has come to an end? That god is pursuing the road after the god realm. Yuanshi was shocked. He hurriedly said, but aren't gods already the strongest? Who told you that the god realm is the strongest? Yin Nuashing glanced at him indifferently. In the ancient era, Quarter Moon and the other 10 gods were still killed. Moreover, I remember saying a few times that there are experts above the god realm. It seems that you have forgotten. Yuanshi was embarrassed. He had indeed forgotten about this matter. After all, when they were talking about this, he had also heard a lot of information. The god realm stands on the 5th step of the later divine level, which is the 5th great realm. Yin Nuashing crossed her palms in front of her. She said, since it is the later divine level, it is naturally not as simple as 1 or 2 steps. However, many people's understanding stops at the 5th step. Even Quarter Moon's understanding stopped at the 5th step. Yin Nuashing's face showed a hint of confusion. In the past, Xianyu was also pursuing the 5th step. The enemies he encountered were not as simple as heavenly gods. They should all be experts above the heavenly god realm. Xian Yin is the same. She is also an expert above the heavenly god realm. However, what is after the 5th step? Quarter Moon thought that after finding Xian Yin, he would have a way to find out. However, before he could get an answer, Someone came knocking on his door. I don't know either. The path is broken, and I can't find a way to take the next step. Xianyue didn't find it in the past, so he wanted to find a way to continue this broken path. Thus I appeared. I will be the one to test this method. What comes after Sky God? This question has been passed down among the gods. Originally, we thought that reaching the god realm was the end. However, the empty feeling in our hearts tells us that it is far from over. However, how should we go forward? Continue to cultivate? However, I keep feeling that something is missing. It is a very strange feeling. There should be something behind it, but I can't find it. I want to find it, but there is no way. The end of existence. What is there? Chapter 921. This scene was like a long time ago, so long ago that his memory was blurred, but he could not forget it because it was blurred. It was a memory that was deeply engraved in his mind. Brother you have been in seclusion for 10,000 years. Come out and take a breather. What are you doing all day long? What are these strange images? Divine statue derivation. What are you trying to deduce in 10,000 years? Heavenly God's path break? Oh, that sounds amazing. But I've been a heavenly God for so many years. Even if I have no path, I still have to go through the same thing. Don't waste time on this. It won't lead to any results. Maybe there is no one above heavenly God. All right, I was wrong. Don't seal me. Wah wah wah. Well, if we're talking about feelings, I more or less have some feelings. My heart feels empty. If you ask me, it should be because of the order of heaven and earth. This is the only reason I can think of. If it is related to the order of heaven and earth. Brother your project is so big. Quarter Moon smiled faintly. It is just a life and death cycle. It will take a few dozen eras. Before they catch up, do your best to set it up. It will take them a lot of effort to find the realm of the gods. I know. I will die when they find me, right? The final battle or something. Sigh, are those people really above heavenly God? Well, although I don't doubt brother you, I still find a little inconceivable. Originally, I thought that the heavenly gods were the strongest, but in the end, they were chased by another group of people who couldn't escape even after fleeing through hundreds of thousands of worlds. Even now, I can still feel their power spreading through the void. Let us help. We still have time anyway. Everyone come in. Brother Yu is doing something new again. There is something fun. Call the little ones from the temple out to play. Watching the girl in the white robe running out happily, Quarter Moon could not help but smile bitterly and shake her head. In the void domain, in the stone corridor, the golden pictures that covered the entire wall had already disappeared. Yin Nuoxing's eyes were lifeless as he stared at the last picture in a daze. He did not speak for a long time, and even stood there in a daze, as if he was in a daze. Little star. Xian gently pulled Yin Nuoxing's sleeve and pushed his arm. Yin Nuoxing shivered and gradually regained her senses. A moment later, she gently sighed in relief. She looked at the face that was close to her and the people around her. She was also stunned for a moment. She shook her head and tossed aside her messy thoughts. She waved her hand and said, "It's fine. Let's continue walking. There's nothing to see here." Everyone was stunned. He had just said those words and stood there motionlessly. They all thought that something had happened to him. Now, it seemed that nothing had happened to him. In the end, it was Yuan Shi from the death-seeking duo who asked this question. Yin Nuoxing paused and pondered for a moment. However, she smiled and said, "It's nothing. I just remembered something. Quarter Moon once used the divine statue deduction to deduce the god's road break. This was also one of the factors that started the long plan that lasted dozens of eras." As she spoke, Yin Nuoxing sighed deeply and shook her head. She was a little dispirited. Everyone did not ask further. When it came to the problem of her memory, everyone would be very careful to avoid it. If she accidentally recalled something important, then it would not be fun. Speaking of which, this god's relic is a little boring. It's even more boring than the previous one. Chu Yingzhan directly changed the topic. Relic? This place is more like the god's dojo. Most of the things left behind are for people to comprehend. Didn't you guys comprehend the golden runes in the previous dojo very enthusiastically? All of your cultivations improved by leaps and bounds. Yin Nuashing spread out her hands. Then, she used her head to point at the giant wall behind them that was gradually getting farther and farther away. That counts too. It's just that you guys don't have the fortune to enjoy it. Those who are at the beginner god level can try it. As for the rest, don't look at it. If you can't withstand it, you will directly dissipate into the laws and order of heaven and earth. Everyone shook their heads, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Forget about it. They could not afford to try it. Well, since it's the God's dojo, there should be something here that you can't miss. As Yin Nuashing spoke, she raised her head to look at the sky. Everyone slowly raised their heads as well. Then they saw many strange golden small beasts hovering in the sky. Everyone was stunned. In the sky, there was a golden fish swimming slowly. There was a golden bear lying on a huge meteorite, sleeping soundly with its head buried. What's more, there was a golden dragon flying by. Of course, these small beasts did not look like physical bodies. It was as if their bodies were roughly drawn with golden lines. Then, their illusory bodies were filled with energy. They looked very illusory and somewhat transparent, very different from physical bodies. What are those? Seeing the group of small beasts swimming in the sky, Yuanshu was also stunned for a moment. He could not help but ask. The condensation of divinity. This can only be condensed by God experts. On the path of the initial God rank, the cultivation of divinity is especially important, even more important than one's own strength. The cultivation of divinity must be improved as one's own strength increases. If the cultivation of divinity cannot keep up with one's own strength, the path ahead will be very difficult. However, if the cultivation of divinity is a step ahead, the improvement of one's strength will become easier. At the later God rank, when one's divinity is complete, one can condense divinity again and bestow one's own position as a god. The higher one's divinity is, the stronger one's divine right will be. At this time, cultivating divinity is a disguised form of cultivating the power of divine right. Gods can also condense divinity outside their bodies during cultivation, just like now. Yin Nuashing pointed at the large clumps of small beasts in the sky and said, "Those are the condensation of divinity. They have extremely pure divinity. If one refines them, one's own divinity will be improved and purified. Those who have not awakened their divinity can also use these to forcibly increase their initial divinity value. For example, from 90 to 99, 100 to 101, and so on. The initial divinity value is still quite important." As soon as the last sentence came out, everyone was instantly dumbfounded. Thinking about their current strength and the fact that they seemed to have awakened their divinity, they suddenly had a headache. They could not help but beat their chests and stomp their feet. It was as if you feel like you've lost a world, right? Yin Nuashing joked. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. Don't say that. It was no wonder that they didn't come to the Void Fortress first, but went to the God's Ruin first. If they had come here first, they could have improved their divinity with these condensed divinity objects, and it wouldn't have been too late to awaken their divinity. Well, while initial divinity is important, it can be made up for later. Let's put it this way. Initial divinity is the starting line, and the higher the starting line, the better it is. But there are other factors as well. Life is a super long race, and having a starting line alone is not enough. Yin Nuashing could not help laughing when she saw everyone's dispirited appearance and offered words of comfort. These things can make up for your lack of initial divinity. While there is no need for that number now that you've awakened your divinity, cultivating divinity is still the most important thing in the initial divine tier. These things can also speed up your cultivation of divinity and might even give you some more unusual abilities. Well, as for those who have not awakened their divinity, Yin Nuashing looked at Little Moon and Yu beside her. The two girls had just stepped into the demigod tier and had not had the time to awaken their divinity. You can rest assured and improve your divinity. You're the lucky ones. Everyone promptly turned their envious, jealous, and hateful gazes towards Little Moon and you, or who were jumping for joy. Those two were the only ones who had not awakened their divinity. The others had all awakened their divinity in that year of cultivation. Lin Sheng could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. They're the ones with great opportunities. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and looked at the small beast wandering in the sky. She suddenly teased, but these divinity agglomerations are not that easy to get. A troublesome? Very powerful? Yuanshi scratched his head and asked in surprise. Divinity agglomerations are filled with the purest divine energy, and there might even be the power of the gods themselves in them. They have intelligence, a very weak one, but they would not use that power for anything. It's just like how treasures of heaven and earth have the ability to seek good fortune and avoid calamity. Now, the things in front of you are the top 10 treasures of heaven and earth. Do you dare to rush over and take them? Yuanshi's cheeks twitched. Once the energy contained in those things burst out, they would not be able to withstand it. Although their intelligence was weak, treasures of heaven and earth would still fight back on their own. Well, they will escape, and their talents are all focused on escaping. They are very slippery. Divinity agglomerations that are not controlled by anyone are as slippery as loaches. You don't have to worry about going for wool and coming home shorn. You just have to use your brains to think about how to catch these little guys. When Yin Nuoxing said the word little guy, he bit it especially hard, causing everyone to be stunned. Instinctively, they felt that something was not right. Seeing that everyone was looking at her in surprise, Yin Nuoxing just smiled mysteriously. She looked up at the sky, and the power of godly right quietly spread out. Then, with a wave of her hand, it spread out in the air. Yin Nuoxing could not completely control the power of godly right now, so she could not use it against the enemy. However, it was still very easy to just spread it out. To put it bluntly, it could only be used to scare people. It looked good, but it was useless. As soon as the power of godly right spread out, the leisurely small beast in the sky suddenly paused. There was a flash of light in their big, bright eyes. The crouching little bear also slowly opened its eyes and looked down. Then it suddenly jumped down from the meteorite and landed on the crowd. Then everyone saw the little golden bear grow bigger and bigger in their eyes, and bigger and bigger, and bigger and bigger. Huff! Yuanshi was stunned. Something was wrong with its size? Was it the so-called near, big, far, small? It was so small just now. How could it? Everyone turned pale with fright. The huge pressure that was like Mount Tai pressing down on them drove them to retreat desperately. And then, boom! Like a meteorite hitting the ground heavily. The huge vibration caused the entire corridor to rumble. Smoke and dust billowed as if there was an earthquake. Fortunately, the quality of the stone corridor here was excellent. Even after being hit by Mount Tai, there was not a single crack. Everyone turned their heads, dumbfounded. Yin Nuoxing was the only one who didn't run away. Even Ming Ming and Zi Yin took a step back in horror when they saw the huge body falling down. Until the huge thing fell, no one would have thought that such a cute little bear in the sky would be. Its body was actually a huge bear that was thousands of feet long. The huge bear that was thousands of feet long crawled on the ground and rubbed its head against Yin Nuoxing's palm intimately. No one knew what was going on, but Yin Nuoxing knew. Because of the godly power, these divine, small beasts felt very intimate. After all, the person who condensed them was also a god. The godly power on the person's body would more or less integrate into these small beasts. Now that they had become ownerless objects, the godly power could easily attract them over. She rubbed the huge bear's head for a while. There was a cool touch and surging energy. It was not the soft feeling of fur. After all, this was also a kind of energy body. She carefully put the huge bear away and turned it into a ball of light only the size of a fist. Yin Nuoxing shook it in front of everyone and said, "Look, it's that simple. F*CKU. Yuanshi couldn't help but raise his middle finger. Don't think that I don't know what you're doing." Everyone was stunned. It didn't feel anything. They looked at Yin Nuoxing in surprise. The latter was accidentally exposed. She couldn't help but smack her lips and turn her head. TSK, you found out. You really did do something? Everyone was shocked. Ahem, in short, this thing is not as easy to get as you think. If you want to catch it, I won't help you. Playing with the ball of light in her hand, Yanuashing glanced at everyone and said arrogantly. Then, she smiled at Little Moon and said, You are come here. This is for you. Seeing that Yin Nuashing pressed the ball of light that the huge bear had turned into between Little Moon's eyebrows, everyone looked at each other silently and took a deep breath. Then, they recalled what he said just now and couldn't help but sigh. This was his test. After all, they couldn't rely on others for everything. This was the time to test them. That's right. Although they comforted themselves like this, why did they feel stifled in their hearts? Chu Yingzhan rolled her eyes. Stupid Siscon. Yin Washing threw a look that said, Anyway, you're not my sister. If you want it, go do it yourself. Do you want me to take care of you for the rest of your life? As for why he could tell so much from just one look, no one knew. They only knew that there was a lot of information in that look. Everyone looked at each other. Yuan, she shrugged, then took the lead and rushed into the sky. There was energy suppression here, but flying wasn't a problem. It was just a little strenuous. Everyone followed suit and rushed into the sky. Yuer, who couldn't sit still, also pulled Xian and the other girls and rushed into the sky. Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He originally planned to make arrangements for the girls himself, but seeing that they were in high spirits, he let them go and play. As for himself, who couldn't fly, he could only sit quietly at the side and watch Little Moon refine that ball of divine light. In the sky above the transparent barrier, those giant beasts were leisurely flying around a large group of meteorites as if they were playing hide-and-seek. At a certain moment, they suddenly felt that something was wrong. They all turned around and saw a group of people rushing into the sky like wolves and tigers. As if they were startled, they roared and fled in all directions like birds and beasts scattering. Moreover, their speed was extremely fast. Everyone could only see rays of light flashing in front of them, and then all that was left in front of them was a group of meteorites. Damn it, they ran so fast. Yuan, she couldn't help but curse. Then, he signaled to everyone and said, Spread out. Everyone nodded. Then, each of them moved and chased after one of the giant beasts. Everyone chased after them while the giant beasts flew in front. Those small beasts all displayed an extremely shocking speed. They were so fast that they almost left afterimages. Everyone couldn't help but blush with shame. The suppression here was very strong. To let them fly at such a fast speed, they had to at least use all of their strength. However, everyone wasn't someone who would give up easily. They immediately roared and moved as if their lives depended on it. Their figures turned into rays of light and chased after the giant beasts. The sky suddenly became a mess. Among them, Yaohua was probably the most miserable one. He originally thought that he was the fastest with the light element, and that even the giant beasts wouldn't be able to escape. However, he had his eyes set on the golden dragon and chased after it with all his might. The light element brought him behind the golden dragon in a flash. Just as he was about to grab its tail, the golden dragon suddenly swung its tail and sent him flying. This idiot, doesn't he know that a dragon's head and tail can't stand on each other? Yin Nuashing was speechless as she watched Yao Hua being sent flying by the tail. She couldn't help but sigh and shake her head. Apart from that, there were a few times when Yao Hua clearly caught up. Then, the giant dragon's body, which was flying rapidly in the air, suddenly stopped. It flapped its wings and quickly bypassed a huge meteorite in front of it, increasing its speed again. As for Yao Hua, who was behind the giant dragon at his maximum speed, he crashed into the meteorite. Boom! A muffled sound suddenly came from the sky. Yao Hua directly smashed through the meteorite, and then a large amount of earth and stone splashed. The scattered fragments exploded in the sky, but they didn't fall to the ground. Instead, they rushed in all directions. Some of them hit others, causing them to stagger. Some of them hit other meteorites, and then meteorites hit meteorites. It was like a chain reaction. Countless gravel flew everywhere. It was a very spectacular scene. Yao Hua, you bastard! Don't make trouble. The duck in our hand flew away. Yao Hua, I'll fight you to the death. They didn't catch up with the divine beasts, but they almost had an internal strife. As for the first one to gain something, it was actually Qin Yin who was silent. Yin Nuoxing was a little surprised. The giant golden bird that Qin Yin had caught was struggling wildly in the sky. The wild power kept colliding with Qin Yan's palm, and a muffled sound broke out in the sky. Yin Nuoxing's pretty face turned slightly pale. After experiencing that power personally, she understood how difficult it was to catch these so-called condensed divinity objects. The divine energy in her jade hand continued to strengthen. As the power layered on top of each other, the giant golden bird's struggle slowly weakened, and its body gradually shrank. This process lasted for a full 10 minutes before it finally stopped. Qin Yin had almost exhausted all the power in her body. The golden bird finally turned into a golden ball of light the size of a fist. The divine energy contained in the ball of light was very rich and pure, and there was an even more wonderful power in it. It seemed to be the faint power of the divine right. However, the latter power would not cause any adverse effects to the person who absorbed it, nor would it allow the person who absorbed it to master it in advance. When the ball of light was absorbed, it would dissipate into pure energy and be absorbed by the person who absorbed it. Seeing Qin Yin land from the sky and stand in front of her, Yin Nuoxing asked with a smile, "How do you feel?" "It's quite difficult to deal with." Qin Yin nodded. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, then handed the ball of light in her hand to Yin Nuoxing. She asked, "How do I use this thing?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She then smiled helplessly and stood up. She took the ball of light and gently stuffed it between Qin Yan's eyebrows. She said, "Circulate your divinity and soul naturally and absorb it. With the current capacity of your bodies, one is enough. You won't be able to handle more." Qin Yin nodded. Mei Mao glanced at her, then slowly sat down beside Little Moon. She formed a seal with her hands and entered a state of cultivation. After looking at her for a while and not sensing anything wrong, Yin Nuoxing turned her gaze away. She looked at the chaotic sky and could not help but chuckle. Chapter 922. Time passed quietly. For cultivators, time was the cheapest thing, because a lot of it could be used up in the blink of an eye. The time that passed in the void was even more vague and meaningless. This was the depths of the void. The endless void wrapped around this long stone corridor, isolating all the elements of the present world. Here, there was only the endless void, which devoured all the elements of the world. How long had passed after that? Perhaps not long after, Yin Nuoxing could feel that there were people coming in from the other side of the gate. They were all masters who had just stepped into the initial god level, so they should be people from the secret realm. However, 90% of those people were blocked in front of the 2 star walls, while the remaining 10% were blocked in the middle of the star walls. Except for him and the people he brought with him, no one else could cross the 2 star walls. It was like a natural mode. Those people were all attracted by the various mysteries contained in the golden picture and passively entered a state of enlightenment. No one knew whether it was a disaster or a blessing, but Yin Nuoxing saw with her own eyes that a person's body suddenly turned into a brilliant rain of light and dissipated extremely quickly. Then, he merged into the void and completely disappeared. That was a sign of Tao assimilation. In the primordial age, people sought and comprehended Tao. In this age, there is no need to use Tao to prove one's own cultivation, but they will still be affected by the Tao left behind in the past and transform into Tao. Yin Nuoxing murmured and looked in the direction of the star walls. He shook his head and didn't say anything. After a while, he cast his gaze to the side. At this time, Xian, Ming, and Yuan Shi were all sitting on the ground and forming hand seals to cultivate. Huge waves of divinity rolled out from their bodies. Looking up at the sky again, Qin Yin had already gone up to capture the divinity behemoths for the 3rd time. That kind of divinity condensation, after transforming back into its original form, wouldn't exist for long without special means. It had to be absorbed immediately. With their current strength, one divinity condensation at a time was already the limit. Therefore, occasionally, they would rush up after cultivating and capture one divinity condensation back to slowly cultivate. However, one divinity condensation would take many days for them to completely absorb. Although he could control the divinity behemoths to come down directly, after one time, Little Moon and Ewer said that it was more fun for him to capture them himself. Therefore, he became the most idle person here. Every time he saw everyone having so much fun, he would sigh and want to sneak out. However, he had to watch them cultivate and guard against any accidents. However, after 2 or 3 times, he realized that it was almost the same whether he was there or not. Therefore, he left a warning array and then helplessly raised the serrated great sword and wandered around blindly. From time to time, he would use the great sword to poke and draw on the ground, as if he was setting up something. This time he found this place. He had been sitting there for 10 days. He activated the serrated greatsword and guided strands of golden threads from the greatsword into a palm-sized array on the ground. As the golden threads continued to be guided, the azure array gradually turned golden. He turned around and looked behind him. There were dozens of palm-sized golden arrays along the way. The others did not take that long, but he had been sitting there for a long time. Moreover, the array was quiet and did not seem to be affected much by the golden color. It seemed that it would take some time for it to be done. Weak footsteps came from behind, causing Yun Nuashing to slowly open her eyes. However, she did not turn her head. She was still looking at the serrated greatsword that was floating half a foot above the array and rotating slowly. When the footsteps stopped behind her and the person stopped behind her, she straightened her body slightly. Without turning her gaze, she directly said, "Has your cultivation come to an end? Why do you have time to look for me?" She did not mean anything by this. It was just that after knowing that this place could quickly cultivate divinity, and after being warned by him that someone could come behind them at any time, everyone was in a hurry. They did not have much free time to stop, and were cultivating nonstop. Other than that, they were also going up to the sky to catch divine beasts. "I'm tired, so I stopped to rest. At the same time, I wanted to see what you were up to." The owner of the sweet voice directly sat down beside Yun Nuashing. She hugged her knees with her hands, and her long black hair fell behind her and fell to the ground. Yun Nuashing glanced at her from the corner of her eyes and did not say anything. He nodded and continued to focus on the serrated greatsword, controlling it to slowly transmit power into the array. "What are you doing?" Seeing that he was ignoring her, Chu Yingzhan could not help but ask. As you can see, Yin Oshing pointed at the serrated greatsword with his chin and said faintly, "I'm trying to open the last energy node." The energy node of the Void Fortress is hidden at the back of this long stone corridor, which is the section behind the giant wall of the Divine Statue Deduction. I've been looking for it all this time. There are quite a few hidden points. There is no pattern, and there are no energy waves. I can only try one by one. Unfortunately, I've already tried 88 of them, and I still haven't found the right one. You can't handle them either? Chu Yingzhan tilted her head and said jokingly. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Although trying one by one is the stupidest way, there is no other way when there is no pattern. Moreover, the information contained in these energy nodes is also different. To put it bluntly, it's like a lock. It's just that some locks can be easily pried open, and some can't be pried open even after a long time. Only by eliminating these useless information can we see whether the energy node hidden underneath is a floor tile or an energy node. Then, he pointed behind him and said, "I've marked the ones that I've tried. There is still a large area that I haven't tried." In the end, Yin Nuashing sighed and pointed at the long stone corridor in front of him that was filled with gravel. He sighed helplessly. These energy nodes were only the size of a palm, and they were scattered all over this huge area. He felt a little hopeless when he saw this. He didn't know how long it would take to complete this task. He didn't know, and he didn't want to know. If he knew the time limit, he would probably be so angry that he would destroy this place with his sword. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. Let him continue being fearless, although he really wanted to destroy this place now. He remembered that there were many people behind him, so he silently suppressed this thought. It was so stifling that his forehead was a little dark. "Your face is dark," Chu Yingzhan said. Veins popped out on Yun Nuoxing's forehead. He really wanted to say, "Not only is my face dark, but I'm also stifling my anger. I'm in the middle of something. Please don't disturb me. I'm afraid I won't be able to hold it in and do something irritable." Chu Yingzhan sighed and said in a helpless tone, "You're so busy. Others are enjoying their cultivation, but you're silently shouldering everything by yourself." Chu Yingzhan sighed and said in a voice that was hard to tell whether she was laughing or feeling helpless, "You said this before." Yun Nuoxing sighed and said, "Only I can do these things. Moreover, I can't cultivate, right? If I don't do it, who else is going to do it? Do I ask you to do it? You're not going to cultivate when you have the best cultivation conditions and the best cultivation opportunities, but you're going to come and help me, this miserable fellow? Yes, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you." Chu Yingzhan rested her head on her arm and looked at Yun Nuoxing quietly. The obsidian Mei Mao didn't seem to be joking, which stunned Yun Nuoxing. Quietly looking at the pair of gem-like eyes, Yun Nuoxing was stunned. He forgot that he was still maintaining the movement of the greatsword in his hand. For a long time, the two of them looked at each other without moving their gazes. It was only when the sound of insufficient energy coming from the greatsword that Yun Nuoxing hurriedly came back to his senses. He was a little flustered as he held the greatsword. Seeing him panic for a moment, Chu Yingzhan was also stunned. She couldn't help but chuckle, causing Yun Nuoxing's face to turn red. He turned his head and pretended to glare fiercely at her. Just as he was about to speak, Chu Yingzhan interrupted him and said, "If you tell me to go back and cultivate, I'll throw you down from here. Do you believe me?" Chu Yingzhan rolled her eyes at him fiercely. She looked at this idiot who was busy working alone. She finally mustered up the courage to come over and help. If she was persuaded to go back because of one sentence, she might not be able to muster up the courage again. She couldn't let him say that sentence no matter what. Yun Nuoxing was stunned and looked at her blankly. He sighed and said, "I said, since you want to help, then help me mark the energy points in front of me, Chu Yingzhan. Didn't you want to persuade me just now?" Yun Nuoxing scratched his head strangely. "Why should I persuade you? It just so happens that I'll be busy with this work for a long time. I'm quite happy that you're willing to help. Moreover, the sooner we finish this, the sooner we can finish." Chu Yingzhan's face turned red. She suddenly jumped up. But if it was in the past, you would definitely persuade me to go back and cultivate. Didn't you force me to change?" Yun Nuoxing also understood why she was suddenly conflicted. He couldn't help but look at her again. He smiled and said, "Since you're here, stay and accompany me." Chu Yingzhan's cheeks twitched. She didn't know why, but she suddenly felt as if she was a lamb in a tiger's mouth. Moreover, she was the one who came here. Although she originally wanted to help, she didn't know why such a feeling rose in her heart. She also didn't know why, but an inexplicable chill ran from her back to her head. Those energy points aren't hidden too much. With your outstanding soul power and the current strength of your divinity, it's very easy to find them. Just mark them out. As for the array to mark them out, use this. Yun Nuoxing poked her forehead and passed a piece of array to her. You're also an array master. It's very easy to set up this kind of simple energy locking array. Moreover, it's not a high-grade array. It's also more obscure when using it, so it'll be very easy for you to master it. After Yun Nuoxing finished speaking, he gave her a thumbs up. Then he pointed into the distance and said, "Start from that stone pillar over there. Slowly mark it out in my direction. If you can, other than marking it out, try to eliminate the information contained in it. If you find an energy point, let me know." "What kind of energy point?" Chu Yingzhan asked blankly. Yun Nuoxing pondered for a while. Then he said very vividly, "If you feel that you've dug up a fountain, just let me know." Chu Yingzhan's mouth twitched, and she almost fell to the ground. Before Chu Yingxian left, Yin Nuoxing added, "Do your best. Don't be impatient. If you're tired, go back and cultivate. Get as many as you can. Leave the rest to me." This sentence directly poked at Chu Yingxian's sore spot. She immediately stomped her feet and turned to glare at Yin Nuoxing. He angrily shouted, "I'll definitely complete it. I'll find the energy point before you. Watch carefully." Ah! Harem Siskon. After leaving Yin Nuoxing with a dumbfounded expression, he left. That roar woke everyone up from their stupor. They opened their eyes and looked at their surroundings. When they saw the embarrassed and angry Chu Yingxian and the confused and helpless Yin Nuoxing, they couldn't help but sigh and shake their heads. Then, they went back to cultivating. They were already used to this kind of situation. Anyway, these two enemies were fighting again. They wouldn't find it strange if they saw Chu Yingxian press Yin Nuoxing to the ground one day, or vice versa. "What did I do to her?" Yin Nuoxing had a strange expression on his face. Why did he get scolded for no reason? However, he couldn't be bothered to dwell on this matter. He calmed down again and glanced at Chu Yingxian, who was already prepared and sitting down to start work. He watched as she clumsily tried to open the array in front of her. After repeatedly trying a few times, she finally carved the first array on the ground. When he saw that she didn't have any problems, Yin Nuoxing gradually closed his mind and continued with his previous work. He reckoned that there was a problem with the energy point that Yin Nuoxing found. He originally estimated that he would be able to settle this point within 10 days. However, on the 6th day, Chu Yingxian appeared out of nowhere and broke his cultivation, causing his progress to fall back a little. Now, with the speed of his analysis, it didn't take long. Perhaps only a day had passed, but someone else came at him at supersonic speed. Yin Nuoxing, who was deep in thought, suddenly felt a great threat. That sense of threat came from the instincts of an array master and also from his thoughts of life and death. He turned around abruptly and saw a purple figure enlarging in front of him. There was a dull sound of a collision, causing everyone to break out in cold sweat. They quickly raised their heads and saw that Yin Nuoxing had been sent flying. They heaved a sigh of relief and silently told themselves to calm down. Then, they continued to cultivate calmly. They were already used to this scene. "Girl, you're going to break my cultivation if you do this." Looking at Ziyin, who directly pounced on him and sent him flying more than 10 meters away, with half of her body hanging on him, Yin Nuoxing coughed lightly. He felt that his lungs were not light. In a flurry, he took off the octopus from his body and pressed her to his side. After looking her up and down, he smiled and said, "Well, you've become more beautiful. It seems that your progress is not bad." "Bah, no, girl, what are you doing?" "I'm here to help you." Ziyin grinned, revealing a row of shiny silver teeth. She hugged Yin Nuoxing's arm and shook it gently as she said, "My cultivation has come to an end. I was going to wait for you to ask for her help, but it seems like it's going to be a long time before that day comes. That's why I'm here." Yin Nuoxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You know what I'm doing? You're looking for the last energy node. Little Purple Soul is already working on it." Ziyin nodded and pointed at a place with her slender finger. Yin Nuoxing was startled. He quickly turned around and saw the little girl with long purple blonde hair running across the rocky ground. She suddenly stopped when she reached a spot and clapped her hands. A blue formation appeared between her hands, and she pressed it gently on the ground. Upon closer inspection, the formation was the same as Yin Nuoxing's energy lock-on formation. After that, the little girl ran happily to another spot and repeated her actions. Judging from the blue formation on the ground, it seemed like she had been working on it for a long time. There were many blue formations on the ground that were automatically analyzing the complex information in the energy nodes. Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded. When did the little girl appear there? Why didn't he notice her at all? Little Purple Soul is very elusive. Even you can't catch her. Have you forgotten when you first went to China? You were looking for Little Purple Soul back then. Ziyin couldn't help but laugh as she watched Little Purple Soul running around, making marks. "Yes, I have to work harder too. I can't let the little girl lose to me." Ziyin laughed to herself. She let go of yin nuashing and scurried out to follow little purple soul to work on the blue formations. Yin nuashing was dumbfounded. Yin nuashing was puzzled. Yin nuashing was dumbfounded. In the end, he let out a long sigh and sat down to continue working on the formations that he had been working on for 7 days. He was dumbfounded as soon as he immersed his mind into it. Damn it, what am I doing now? Not long after, Ming Ming's cultivation also came to an end. Furthermore, she was sitting beside him. Ming Ming's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about this. However, this lass didn't seem to have any intention of disturbing him. She just took Bing, from his head and Xiao Xian from his neck. She just sat there quietly, as if she was secretly cheering him on. Ming 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 didn't make a sound, which made him heave a sigh of relief. The stubborn Ming 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 only wanted to chew on this tough bone that he had found so far. He never thought that there would be so many external factors interfering with his plan. However, as if it was a joke, the point that he found still could not be opened. A few days later, the energy point that little purple soul found suddenly erupted like a fountain of energy. Before he could react, the gigantic sawtooth sword that was hanging beside Yun Nuo planet charged into the energy fountain and went in head first. Thump! As usual, there was a sound that sounded like a heartbeat. A colorful beam of light shot up into the sky from where the spring was. Then it exploded in the void. Colorful veins extended in all directions, causing everyone to raise their heads in shock. The energy density in this space was rapidly increasing. As the energy nodes were opened, the marked energy points on the ground suddenly flickered with multicolored light. The multicolored energy was like a fountain, forming a huge fountain. The energy was so dense that it condensed into a multicolored liquid that flowed on the ground. The energy mist drifted in the air, making the place somewhat hazy. Yin Nuashing stood up and stared at the ground blankly. She took a deep breath and said, "So, what am I doing?" Chapter 923. In the sky, a dazzling beam of light suddenly exploded, and the last blurry scarlet energy node also faded under the colorful beam of light. Slowly, it was dyed with some colors and gradually merged with the golden energy veins. When the last of the red light faded, the sky suddenly shook. Boom! A muffled sound came from the sky like rolling thunder, causing countless people to raise their heads in astonishment. They instinctively felt that something seemed to be changing in the sky. The people in the Jiesu secret realm suddenly raised their heads because of a scream. When they saw the thing that appeared in the sky, they couldn't help but be shocked. Some people even ran away on the spot. Although they didn't know what was going on, it was always right to run away first. Those who saw that thing falling down were all idiots. Why do I feel like we are either running away or running away in the Jiesu secret realm? Last time, the god relic. Shut up. You're not the only one who is running away. It suddenly appeared in the sky, and what shocked everyone was that it was a gigantic phantom. It might not be right to call it phantom, because it seemed to have a physical shadow, and judging from its outline and general appearance, it seemed to be a floating island, and it was a floating island that was about the same size as the Jiesu secret realm. Of course, the appearance of a floating island alone wouldn't make anyone panic. After the transparent floating island appeared, it rapidly descended from the sky with a rumbling sound. Its speed seemed to have broken the sound barrier, and it shocked countless people to the point that their hair stood on end. If that thing fell at supersonic speed, they wouldn't even know how they died. Not to mention being smashed into meat paste, it was already a blessing for their seniors to leave behind something that was still intact. A huge amount of space power crazily gathered in the sky, and the space in the Jiesu secret realm became very unstable. The rich space power made everything around them appear to be a strange silver blue color. During this period of time, their eyes couldn't even distinguish other colors. They could only see a rich silver blue color, as if their bodies had been eroded by the space power. The rich space power that couldn't be released drifted in all directions, leaving a mark of the space power on everything it touched. The green forest and trees turned silver blue for a moment, then quickly returned to their original color. However, the life force in that place was no longer there. The huge amount of space power attracted by the overlapping space caused the illusion to gradually solidify. At this moment, the people who were still looking up at the sky could finally see clearly that it was indeed a huge floating island. However, that floating island was in a state of disintegration. Huge cracks spread out from the center of the island like a spider web, dividing the huge island into thousands and hundreds of pieces. However, they didn't scatter because of the external forces. They were still gathered together, maintaining an extremely fragile state of balance that could be easily broken. The illusion became more and more solid. It fell from extremely high altitude, and its size and shadow became crazily bigger in front of countless people's eyes. The air was screaming and screaming. As it became more and more solid, everyone could even see the huge wind marks in the sky caused by its high speed and size. A deafening roar came from the sky, and the silver blue space power gathered at the bottom of the floating island. It was like an even bigger space storm was blowing in the chaotic space. This shaky space had almost completely collapsed, and only a weak space rule power was left to bind the space here, so that it wouldn't collapse directly. Gradually, everyone stopped running away. Looking at the rapidly approaching shadow, they couldn't help but sigh. Logically speaking, this huge floating island that was on the verge of collapse seemed to be bigger than the Jesu's secret realm. Where could they run to? If they had the strength to run, they might as well turn around and face it head-on, or gather everyone's strength and attack together. Maybe they could push it back? Chila. Suddenly, a huge silver dragon that was thousands of feet long soared into the sky. The wild thunder power tore open huge cracks in the space, and it rushed towards the huge floating island that was falling down. That dazzling light made many people turn their eyes and look at that lightning nervously. That was the god sun's full strength attack, and the moment it came into contact with the floating island, it directly passed through the ladder. That god sun was also stunned. In his senses, his attack didn't even touch a hair of the floating island. However, from an energy feedback, he felt an extremely huge space rule power coming from the floating island that was gradually solidifying. That space rule power was so huge that it was enough to clean the entire Jesu's secret realm. That thunderbolt didn't work, and several novice god-level experts launched their all-out attacks, but the result was the same. Their attacks passed through the half-solid floating island, and they didn't touch anything. The floating island didn't seem to have a solid body, and it didn't even seem to be in the form of energy. Let's do it. The fact that their attacks didn't work made them feel a little desperate. After they reacted, their eyes turned red, and they gathered all the strength in their body to condense a layer of extremely solid energy barrier around them. Then, they looked into the distance. It seemed that many people made the same choice. Since their attacks didn't work, and they couldn't escape, then they would just have to face it head-on. They might still have a chance to survive if they resisted a little. The space rule that came from above already made everyone feel a fatal threat, but they didn't have any other choice. That huge floating island had already arrived. When the shadow floating island came into contact with the Jesu's secret realm continent, the huge spatial storm that had gathered at the bottom of the island burst like a balloon. The spatial energy that had gathered was completely released in a short 1 second, turning into 2 huge shockwaves that swept across the entire Jesu's secret realm. The silver blue light was the last thing that countless people saw. They seemed to vaguely see the 2 continents fusing together, but they didn't have the time to care about that anymore. The violent spatial shockwaves had already swept across the entire Jesu's secret realm. Rumble, a violent tremor passed through the barrier of the secret realm. This was the space shaking. Even the people in the god's relic could feel this huge tremor. In the rock corridor, Yin Nuashing and the others who had just activated their energy nodes didn't move in that area. At this time, the violent tremor made them stagger, and they quickly helped the people beside them to squat down. Yin Nuashing didn't have any strength. His body shook, and he was about to fall. A few jade hands quickly pulled him up and then pressed him to sit on the ground. Soft bodies were pressed against his front and back, and he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Was there need to be so nervous? The rumbling sound became more and more intense, and the rock corridor was shaking. However, the void domain was still dead silent, and there was no change. The divine giant beasts in the sky flew around the meteorite area in a panic, and one of them pushed the meteorite in the sky a few thousand meters away. This rock corridor experienced such a violent tremor, but it still didn't suffer any damage. It was obvious that its quality was high. It was just that they didn't know what material the divine god used to have such a strong earthquake resistance. Can you stop talking? Everyone couldn't help but roll their eyes when they heard what Yao Hua was mumbling about. The space was filled with extremely violent spatial fluctuations. It felt as if they were in the center of an impact storm, and there was violent energy in all directions that could completely destroy them. The huge killing intent that originated from the space made many people turn pale. Even if they had advanced to the beginner god level, they felt that their bodies were very small under the raging power of this power. This kind of spatial riot could only be created by at least an emperor god level expert. The power of space is rioting. Yin Nuashing felt the abnormal spatial fluctuations, and her expression also became serious. Space replacement? Large-scale spatial fluctuations. This is the inner space is about to be exposed. Inner space. Everyone was also stunned. They seemed to have heard him mention it before, but they didn't know what it was exactly. However, it was obviously not the time to ask for an explanation. Everyone squatted down and held their heads. Although they knew that holding their heads couldn't block anything, the flying meteorites in the sky looked really scary. The speed of those meteorites was more than 10 times the speed of sound, and there was even one that was more than 100 meters above their heads. That huge size was simply as if it was flying close to their heads, and it was really frightening. That is to say, our previous guesses were all correct. These energy nodes have been arranged? Is there some kind of mechanism? Yuanshi also squatted in the corner, trembling. He covered his ears to prevent himself from hearing the noisy, spatial vibrations around him, and roared loudly. Then what should we do now? The power of space outside is so strong that it has penetrated into this place. Can we still stay in this place? Yin Nuashing's eyes flashed rapidly. She looked at the spatial vibrations in this area, then looked into the distance, and then looked at the fountain that was constantly spewing out colorful energy. She hesitated for a while, and then shouted against the spatial vibrations, "Let's go out." No, not now. Seeing that everyone took the lead and wanted to stand up, Yin Nuashing also became anxious. She hurriedly jumped up, but she lost her balance and almost fell flat on her face. In the end, she fell into a soft embrace. She didn't care about anything else and roared, "At least wait until the spatial vibrations stop." The situation now is the space within a 10-meter radius has been reset hundreds of times. Don't move. The slightest movement will make the spatial vibrations more intense. When the time comes, don't blame me for not warning you if your hands and feet are upside down. Wah. Before Yin Nuashing finished speaking, he was still in a half-lying position on the ground. Suddenly, the rock corridor trembled, causing him and the person who was holding him to flip over. They rolled on the ground dozens of times like a stuffy gourd. Everyone quickly turned their gazes when they heard the scream. Then they saw Yin Nuashing and Xian hugging each other and rolling dozens of meters away. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that the two of them seemed to be fine. But after a while, they couldn't relax anymore, because they saw that the floor of the stone corridor seemed to be tilting up slightly. As mentioned before, some parts of the stone corridor weren't completely inlaid. They seemed to be floating in the void and stuck closely together. There were floating platforms a few meters in the middle. The energy node they were at was a separate floating platform. When they were looking for the energy node earlier, everyone came over to help. After they found it, they gathered together to join in the fun. At this time, the floating platform shook and tilted up like a tilted plate. However, the tilted end was facing the endless void. At this time, it was inconvenient for everyone to move. The spatial vibrations were very strong, and the space within a 10-meter radius had been divided into hundreds of parts. If they moved casually, they might change positions with the space. It would be fun if their hands and feet were swapped and their heads were left behind. But if they didn't move now, it seemed like they would fall into the endless void. Walala! The sound of metal chains suddenly rang out, startling everyone. At this time, their hands and feet were all locked into the ground. When they heard this strange sound, they were all stunned. They quickly turned their gazes and saw a golden chain as thick as an arm extending towards them like dozens of pythons. With a slight tremble, it wrapped around their waists and abdomens. Looking along the golden chain, they could see many segments of the chain tangling chaotically in the space. Some of the chains couldn't even find the source. The source of the chains had been shifted to another location. If it weren't for the fact that the divine artifact was very strong, this spatial shift would have been enough to shatter it. Now that the divine artifact was still intact, it could only be said that the quality of the chain itself was very strong. However, it didn't matter if they couldn't find the source. There was only one person who could use a divine artifact here, and it was a divine artifact that they were familiar with. As soon as they turned their heads, they saw Yun Nuoshing lying at the front of the floating platform that was tilted up high. His right hand was wrapped in circles of golden chains. One end was tied to another floating platform, while the other end was tightly wrapped around the group of people. At the same time, the platform they were on was also tied together. Xian, who was in his arms, was also helping to tighten the chains with both hands, tying the two platforms tightly together, even though the platform they were on was already vertical. Hold on tight. We won't be able to find it if we fall. Yin Nuoshing's face was flushed red. With his current strength, it was too much for him to lift the weight of dozens of people. Emptiness Realm cultivators weren't much stronger than mortals. Some mortals who knew martial arts or knew how to play tricks could even throw an Emptiness Realm cultivator to the ground. Fortunately, Xian was helping him bear most of the weight of the chains, so he didn't tear his arm apart first. Yuanshi risked his life to look down. The platform they were on was already tilted up at a 90-degree angle. They stuck their bodies firmly to the floor. When they turned their heads, they could see the dark void domain directly below them. It was like a black hole that had an extremely mysterious magic power attracting them over. Rumble, the tremors lasted for a long time. During this time, everyone could even hear the screams of the tightened chains. Every time there was a loud bang, it would make their hearts beat wildly. This was the life bond that was currently maintaining their safety. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't move around in this space, they would have flown up long ago. This place only suppressed their strength, but it was still possible to fly. It was just that the space was in turmoil now, so Yin Nuoshing warned them not to move around recklessly. The rumbling tremors were accompanied by two violent explosions of energy storms. It was as if the storms were detonated by something. Then, everything returned to silence. It came quickly, but it didn't leave quickly. It was better to say that it lasted for a long time. During that time, everyone's hearts were hanging. Now that they felt that the space was gradually stabilizing, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Wait for another 5 minutes. The fluctuations in the space are gradually returning to normal. When it completely returns to normal, we will be able to move again. Right now, most of the space is still in a state of chaos. Yin Nuoshing's face was covered in sweat. He was holding the chain so tightly that he couldn't feel his arms. Fortunately, this is the void domain. Although it is a void domain created by a god, it is not inferior to a purely natural void domain. This place has isolated a large portion of the spatial shockwaves. At least the last wave of spatial shockwaves didn't affect us. Otherwise, we would be hanging in the void domain later. Xian looked at him nervously. Her deep purple eyes flashed with heartache. Her lily-white hand that was holding the chain hugged him. She pulled out her other hand and used her sleeve to gently wipe away the sweat on his face. Seeing this, Yin Nuashing lowered his head and looked at her. He grinned foolishly and shook his head to show that he was fine. After waiting for a while, they felt that the space had completely returned to normal. Only then did everyone resume their movements. They pulled themselves from the ground and the golden chain. Then they gradually flew up. Looking at the floating platform that was in a vertical state, they all flew towards the normal platform. Xian took the lead and rushed out with Yin Nuashing in her arms. Ming and the other girls hurriedly followed behind her. When they landed on the ground, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. They looked up at the path back and couldn't help but take a deep breath. It seems that it wasn't completely unaffected, Yuanshi said as he wiped away his sweat. On the way back, the floating platforms were all over the place. Two of them even crashed into each other and shattered into pieces. The only ones that remained intact were the two huge star walls. They were still standing on the floating platforms without any damage. As for the people who were passively comprehending Tao under the huge walls, most of them had fainted. There was also a portion of them who were still comprehending Tao peacefully. No one knew what had happened to the Dharmakaya just now. Everyone looked at each other. Yin Nuashing also raised her chin to signal them. The group of people quickly flew towards the exit. Right now, there should be earth-shattering changes outside. Not to mention anything else, most of the space would definitely be completely torn apart by the violent spatial impact just now. It didn't take much time to get out of the rock corridor. In less than 20 minutes, everyone who flew at full speed flew out of the dark castle. They stood in the sky and looked around vigilantly. Then, they widened their eyes in horror. The sky was pitch black, and the ground was desolate. It was as gray as death. Silver-blue storms swept out from the shattered space and raged on the ground, rolling up layers of skin on the fragile gray ground. On the ground, there were huge cracks that stretched as far as the eye could see. The surroundings were also as quiet as death. There was nothing in the range of their senses. There was nothing at all. The aura of death swept across the entire world. Just by looking at it, they could feel the desolation here. There was also a faint sense of sadness mixed in it. It was as if the world had been destroyed. The tyrannical power still remains on this broken land, destroying this place forever. The raging lonely wind has extinguished all the sources of life. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but sigh when she saw this scene in Xian's arms. This is the Jiesu arcane realm. This is the original appearance of this world, the innermost space. This is the broken small world that was destroyed by the Shadow, Emperor, and Zai. Chapter 924. The sky was torn apart, the earth was falling apart, and the spatial storms that swept out from the spatial cracks continued to destroy this fragile world. The sky was gray and gloomy, and there were no longer 16 bright colors. There was only a deathly gray. In the hazy sky, there were several remnants of power from the primordial age that did not dissipate and became the echoes of destruction here. In front of the scene of heaven and earth falling apart, everyone was silent and speechless. Looking at this scene of destruction, they did not know what to say or what kind of expression to show. Yin Nuashing waved her hand and pointed to the ground, indicating for Xian to land. The group of people also landed on the ground. Yin Nuashing squatted down and pinched the sand on the ground with her fingers. She rubbed it a few times and nodded. That's right, this is the remains of a world that was destroyed in the primordial age. Without the protection of the gods, the aura of the great samsara has spread throughout the entire secret realm. The power left behind by the Shadow Emperor has been entangled with the remaining power of the rules of heaven and earth here, unable to dissipate. This is the dark side of this world, and it will never be able to give birth to new life. It will forever be fixed in this scene of the death of the world. There were many huge fragments floating in the sky, as if they were huge fragments that had been peeled off from the earth and floating islands. They floated in the sky, quietly and alone, and had always been like this since ancient times. It was incredible that such huge volumes did not fall to the ground due to gravity. The devastating spatial shockwaves had already dissipated and did not affect this broken world. The enormous power of space had also been exhausted by the appearance of the innermost space. However, the remaining power of space still made the space between heaven and earth somewhat chaotic. From time to time, silver-blue light could be seen flashing in the sky, and then the space quietly twisted into a vortex. Chu Yingxian took a deep breath and coughed violently, as if she had inhaled sand and stones. She coughed so hard that she felt like she was going to puke out her lungs. After a long time, she rubbed her burning throat. A teardrop appeared on Mei Mao's face. She said unhappily, "The air is so dirty. It's hard to breathe." I inhaled sand. The laws and order here are infinitely leaning towards chaos. Before the creation of heaven and earth, before the laws and order were born, the chaos before the descent of the void, the powers of the three heavenly gods have always been entangled here. The laws of heaven and earth will never be able to return to normal. Yin Nuoxing glanced at her and said, "Being able to stand here without feeling uncomfortable from the chaotic power of laws is already a pretty good result. What's up with that world?" "Those two surface worlds," Yuan Shi asked, puzzled. This was the innermost space, the secret realm of Jie-Su that was completely destroyed. Then what about the place that appeared in front of them? It was filled with the ruins of high-ranking gods, various palaces, and the ruins of powerful immortals and demons. The silhouette of time. Yin Nuoxing raised her head to look at the sky. She paced a few times on the ground before she turned back to look at Zhongyu and said, "Those are the traces of the past that were recorded by the order here, the illusory reality that appeared because of the chaos caused by the powers of the three heavenly gods. Everything that happened in those two spaces was real. The powers of the three heavenly gods had been constantly evolving over the long years, creating two fake spaces that covered the inner space, which were the two different secret realms of Jie-Su that we saw before. Well, although they were fake, they were still real. Everything that we gained from them was real. However, their existence itself was only recorded by the order here, a silhouette of a long time ago. They were just reflections of the past. If any of the three heavenly gods were proficient in the power of life, perhaps we could see that there would be a large number of lives in the secret realm, even if they were fake. I had thought that the secret realm of the ancient era had been completely destroyed, and then new lives were born in the ruins. But now, it seems like that is not the case. The replacement of the old and the new happened in the same era, before the secret realm of Jie-Su was destroyed. This is the original appearance of the secret realm of Jie-Su. Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh of relief. Now, the flow of the energy that connected the order and the law of heaven and earth has been reversed, and the inner space is naturally exposed. Those two spaces no longer exist, as the surface layer has been stripped away. What is restored in front of you now is the truth of this world. Everyone was a little confused as they listened to her. However, they could still understand it. They could only understand it in a simple way. Things that were too profound, even if some of them had successfully ascended to the elementary god tier, they still could not understand such profound things. Speaking of which, Yuan Shi suddenly thought of a very important question. "Little star, did you know from the beginning that reversing the flow of the energy would expose the inner space?" Yin Nuoxing shook her head. "I only knew what had happened at the very last moment. Before that, I didn't even know what would happen if I reversed the flow of the energy. I just thought, maybe I would trigger something by doing this. That's why I kept doing it." After saying that, she even spread her hands out at everyone. Everyone was confused. "So you're just messing around blindly and accidentally exposed the inner space?" Yin Nuoxing was suddenly stunned, as if she suddenly remembered something. "Speaking of which, I wasn't completely blinded, right? Have you forgotten about the holy relic? Are these two things related?" Yuan Shi and the others asked suspiciously. "More or less. If you can see the flow of the energy in this world, which is the flow of the energy, you will know what my initial goal was." As Yin Nuoxing spoke, he grabbed little purple soul, who was circling around his feet, and pulled her into his arms. He stroked her long purple hair and said, Most of the energy in the Jiesu secret realm points in all directions and finally extends into the void. However, there are some places where the energy meridians converge. Because the energy meridians converge together, a large amount of energy is gathered at those places, and at the converging point of the energy meridians is something like a twisting point. At this point, everyone understood something. That twisting point is the holy relic. In other words, a large amount of energy in this world is gathering towards the holy relic. If you reverse the flow of the energy meridians, the holy relic's energy will flow in reverse. This way, its invincible nature will be broken, and then you should be able to get it. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head and nodded. He looked at Lin Sheng and said, "Was the situation with the rest of the Far Light Academy that I asked you to arrange?" When Lin Sheng heard this, he quickly took out the Far Light Academy's token to contact the others. However, his soul power sank into the token, and it was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no response at all. Chuan Mu and the others also took out their tokens and tried to use their souls to communicate. However, there was no response for a long time. Everyone's faces darkened. Could something have happened in the huge spatial tremor just now? Even though they were inside the Void Fortress, they could still feel the huge spatial energy vibrations. If it weren't for the Void Fortress, not many of them would have been able to withstand the violent spatial shockwaves, let alone the people outside. The space is still unstable, so it's normal that we can't connect through our souls. The spatial factor is not normal, so naturally, our souls can't connect. We can still communicate through our souls because the space around us is still stable. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and comforted them. Something might not have happened. Lin Sheng and the others laughed dryly. This was the only thing they could think of now. If something really happened to the other half, they did not know how to explain it when they returned. The space is completely overlapped. This land has been torn apart. This is the appearance of the Jiesu secret realm when it last existed. It's bigger than the original, but most of the places still match. Yin Nuoxing turned his head and looked behind him. That direction was the center of the void area. Logically speaking, there should be a void holy object that had not appeared yet. However, he seemed to feel that something was not quite right. He turned his gaze again. Everyone saw him shaking his head back and forth as if he was looking at something. They followed his gaze and saw that the black ancient castle was still standing between heaven and earth. It looked especially desolate under the gray sky. The ruins of the gods had stood in the river of time for eternity. However, when they looked at the ancient castle again, the solemn and dignified feeling no longer existed. Instead, it was replaced by an unconcealable sadness. It seemed to be mourning the destruction of this world. Yin Nuoxing stared at the black ancient castle in a daze. Everyone else also stared at it in a daze. After a long while, Yin Nuoxing suddenly reached out his hand and waved it at the ancient castle. The waves of divine right were released again. Bang! At the top of the castle, a hole was suddenly blasted open. Smoke, dust, and black debris swirled in the air. Soon after, everyone saw a tiny shadow flash past the place where the smoke and dust billowed. It turned into a ray of light and rushed towards them, causing them to be instantly on alert. However, they were stunned just as they were on guard. This was because the shadow was the serrated greatsword that Yin Nuoxing had been using to reverse the energy nodes. After reversing the last energy node, it had disappeared. Everyone thought that the serrated greatsword had completed its mission and turned into energy and disappeared. When they saw it charge out again, they were all stunned. After the serrated greatsword appeared, it shot towards them as fast as lightning. In just a few breaths' time, it had arrived and landed safely in Yin Nuoxing's hand. Yin Nuoxing's eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness as he held this strange-looking sawtooth greatsword in his hand. He raised it up and pointed it toward the sky. He clenched his fists slightly, and a weak force surged into the greatsword. Following the transmission of this little bit of force, the greatsword began to change under everyone's gaze. First, it slowly shrank until it was only half the length of a forearm. Then, those saw teeth all retracted back into the body of the sword. The sword guard also disappeared, and the sword tip quietly melted into a ball. In short, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the serrated greatsword turned into a round scepter with a thin bottom and a thick top. There was also a spherical dent at the top. A fist-sized purplish-black sun floated at the top of the scepter. It emitted a wave of energy that everyone was very familiar with. It was the power of the void. Moreover, there seemed to be another power mixed in with this power. It was a powerful power that could change the laws and order. The holy artifact of the void. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the scepter in his hand and was stunned for a moment. He had a little guess, a guess that had just been born not long ago. However, when this guess was immediately realized, he could not help but be stunned. He thought that this serrated greatsword had something to do with the holy artifact of the void, such as the key to open it. He did not expect it to be the holy artifact of the void itself. Then, can we also obtain the holy artifacts of the other regions now? Someone suddenly said, causing everyone's expressions to change rapidly. I suddenly have a bad idea. Suddenly, Yao Hua laughed with an inexplicable expression. What a coincidence. I also have a bad idea. Lin Xing also licked his lips and laughed evilly. Ahem, I'll wait for you in the dark elemental region. Go and come back quickly. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and glanced at everyone. He knew what the idea was without having to say it out loud. After all, he was the one who came up with the idea. It sounded very interesting to have 16 holy relics in one go. Oh, everyone responded heroically. Then, they split into 14 groups and rushed off in different directions. In an instant, only Yin Nuoxing and the other 10 people were left. You actually let them go without saying anything? Yuanxi looked at Yin Nuoxing strangely. There are still tens of millions of people in the secret realm. If they split up, will they have enough combat power? Oh, it shouldn't be a big problem. It should be... Yin Nuoxing nodded in relief and said, I just took a look. There are at least 2 or 3 regions around here. There are no people, but there are pieces of space blocks in the space. It seems like something is moving over. Could it be that when the inner space switches, the people in the original place have to wait for a while before they can come here? Nightmare said. Yin Nuoxing shrugged in silent agreement, because he was not too sure. They came out from the Void Fortress and did not know about the energy nodes, nor did they have any clues to remind them that they could obtain the holy artifact by turning the energy nodes. They had come here blindly, and they did not know what would happen when the inner space was switched. It's not like there's no one at all. Yin Nuoxing's eyes glowed with an ocean blue light. His eye of the ocean looked into the distance and suddenly saw something. He was stunned. In his line of sight, a group of people was emerging from a cave. Their faces were covered in dust, but there was still some excitement on their faces, as if they were excited when they had a bountiful harvest. However, when this group of people came out, their faces were immediately replaced by astonishment and confusion. That feeling was as if they had just woken up and found that the world had been destroyed. They stood on the ground of ashes and looked at the gray and dilapidated sky, not knowing what to do. Feelings of confusion and bewilderment surged into their hearts all at once, leaving them dumbfounded. Well, it seems that people who enter the secret realm or other places can avoid the huge spatial impact caused by the overlapping of space. The others are still in the state of spatial transfer. The people in the small secret realm can directly come here from the original secret realm. I didn't expect this. Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. There's someone here, right? Yuanxi suddenly became excited. He quickly waved his hand. Then don't just stand there. Let's go to the dark elemental area and get the holy artifacts first. After he finished speaking, he ran away. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He smiled bitterly and quickly waved his hand to get everyone to follow him. There was a distance between the void area and the dark elemental area. Moreover, the most obvious sign in the sky was no longer there. They could only rely on their senses to identify the direction. The powerful energy emitted by the holy artifacts was still very easy to identify. They just had to fly in that direction. Along the way, they saw some people standing on the gray and ruined ground with blank faces. They looked around at a loss and did not notice that a group of people was flying across the sky with bad intentions. They arrived at the dark elemental area and found the location of the dark elemental holy artifact. They did not participate in the fight for the holy artifact. They only watched from afar. At this time, there was no one in this place. After arriving here, no one dared to touch it directly because of the dark elemental energy. It was mainly because Yun Nuashing did not let them interfere. He had to catch the dark elemental holy artifact himself. It was a black object with a round base that looked like an hourglass. However, the hourglass was horizontal. They could see black mist flowing inside the hourglass, emitting a chaotic energy. Seeing that he calmly touched it directly with his hand, everyone was relieved. It seemed that it was indeed feasible. They had successfully completed their task here. Now it was up to the others. They had the advantage over the others. If there were no accidents, they should be able to complete it smoothly. After the dark, elemental holy artifacts were in his hands, the chaotic energy fluctuations gradually converged. In the end, it was completely restrained. Not a single fluctuation was emitted. Yin Noashing finally had the time to look at the two holy artifacts in his hands. There was nothing much to say about their appearance. He was looking at the energy contained in them. As expected, they both contained dark elemental energy. The void holy artifact contained a huge amount of void power and dark elemental energy. As for the dark elemental holy artifact, it was just dark elemental energy. Generally speaking, if the source of dark elemental energy in the divine realm is not removed, the dark elemental energy flowing into the secret realm will not stop. However, a secret realm can contain a huge amount of dark elemental energy. It will not be full even after hundreds of millions of years. There is no need to worry about an explosion when the dark elemental energy in the secret realm overflows. Yun Nuashing tossed the two holy artifacts in his hands. Suddenly, a jade-like hand reached out from the side and snatched the holy artifact from his hands. He was speechless when he saw the holy artifacts. However, we should think of a way to solve it when we have the time. The Shadow Gate is ultimately just a stopgap measure. The main point is to remove the source of dark elemental energy in the divine realm. However, this is probably very difficult to achieve. It will disturb the foundation of the divine realm. Yun Nuashing scratched his head in distress. I don't know the exact situation, but nothing has happened for so many years. If this continues, it will be fine as long as nothing happens, right? Yuanshi looked at him and advised, even you think it is a big project. If there is no other way, then don't torment yourself. That is not wrong. Yun Nuashing smiled bitterly. Nothing has happened for so many years. Nothing should happen in the future, right? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.